And then finally we get to the trailhead that leads to the village. And then, finally, mom walks into the village. And in that moment, I didn't care why she left. That didn't matter to me anymore.
All right. And with that, welcome back to the Backcountry Manifesto podcast, where I'm your buddy Out West, Hayden Samek, and today on the show, we're talking to David Good, PhD candidate at the University of Guelph. That is in Ontario.
Yes. Yeah.
And you are on the show today to talk to us about a place and a story very far from Ontario.
Yeah.
So tell me, how did you grow up in your very earliest years?
Yeah, sure. And this really ties into, what I'm doing in my research, my PhD. So, I guess it's like the origin story,
Right.
Actually it's funny because some people ask when I give a presentation about my research, involving, studying the microbiome of the Yanomami people are like, how in the world did you even get a chance to do this? And I'm just like, all right, gather around everybody. I got a story to tell because I can't answer it in like 1 second, or like in one sentence. So I guess, I could say my origin story begins with my parents. It starts with, it can start with my dad, who was a PhD student in anthropology at Penn State University. And in the mid 70s, he worked under the great Napoleon Chagnon, and he was tasked to go into one of the more remote Yanomami communities in Venezuela to study protein intake, migratory patterns, hunting patterns, etc. And what made studying the Yanomami people so special during that time is that they were known, or they were popularized as one of the last and remaining relatively isolated indigenous peoples in the Amazon that have retained much of their traditional lifestyle of hunting and gathering and small scale horticulture, and they live communally under a single roof. And I guess for social scientists, and I'm not a social scientist, but I'm based on what I read, it's like a unique opportunity to study a people that has not been, touched by the outside world in a way that has radically altered their culture, their society, as it has for Native Americans here, as it did for other tribal groups in Amazonia.
Right. And you might see these like cultural trinkets of outside influence here and there, like a pair of flip-flops or like a t-shirt or like just something, but it hasn't permeated to the point that it's really enacted it's more of like a curiosity rather than a cultural influence.
Yeah,
like the outside.
At that time, and things were starting to diffuse in for sure. And so, my dad was tasked for this, I believe was a 15, 18 month research endeavor for him to go in to live, to immerse himself among this community, one of them known as Hasapue, and to simply just gather data, ethnographic data, as you would as an anthropologist, to be a participant observer. You participate, but you stay afar and you observe and you collect ethnographic data.
You're detached a little bit. Like you need to maintain a certain, like almost like and not that this is illustrated by any sort of power dynamic, but like if you are a manager and you have 10 employees, it's like you need to be present, you need to like observe, but you ought not to like you ought not to fraternize too much. Is that like kind of the feel of it?
Yeah, and at least in that time, and I feel like my dad represents sort of the tail end of the classical era of anthropology. And I guess, the ethical and academic conduct of an anthropologist is to not get involved, right? And you're there to observe, participate if you can, but simply collect your data. And then, you write your dissertation and you get your PhD and you write books and you become a professor, et cetera, et cetera. The problem my dad had with that is that how can I really get to know a people well? How can I explain why people behave certain ways? Why do they think certain ways? By just sitting back and just collecting some data, right? He said, the only way I can get to know people is if I learn their language. Problem is, there's no Rosetta Stone for Yanomami. The Yanomami language is not related to any other language in the world.
Before we start with the Yanomami language, can you give me a 1,000-foot overview of the Yanomami people?
Sure. Yeah. So the Yanomami, it's who the Yanomami, as they were, popularized to the world in like the 60s and 70s, and that has evolved quite a bit, right? Evolved quite a bit in the last half century. But in the 60s and 70s, the Yanomami people had first made sustained Western contact by missionaries. And because of that, they became known to the world, by their unique culture and their unique society. And so they are lowland indigenous peoples that live in the Amazon region of southern eastern Venezuela and northern Brazil. So their territory spans across borders, though in those regions, there is no border, right? So, and so the Yanomami are, during that time, were characterized as a people that lived communally in a single roundhouse structure called a Chagnon, which is basically a thatch roof and a kind of a communal opening in the middle. And it can have anywhere from 50 to 150 to 200 community members, comprised of maybe 1, 2, or 3 lineages. And then everything that they need to live and survive in the Amazon is extracted from the surrounding rainforest. And they hunt with the bow and arrow. They fished from the nearby creeks. They practice horticulture. So their staple crop was the plantains, at least the Yanomami in the Venezuelan Upper Orinoco region. And they would forage for mushrooms and honey and nuts and berries. And it was a very sustainable way of life. And they had a language that was not unique to any other language in the world. And so
it was unique to any other language.
Yeah,
in the world.
sorry.
Okay,
yeah. So not related to any other language in the world. So it kind of shows that that kind of adds more evidence as to, to their isolation and their remoteness,
So these are it's a true hunter-gatherer with an agrarian bent. Like they do have certain crops, but would you say that the majority of what they consume and use is hunted/gathered? I
would argue that at least, when they were popularized to the world in the mid 20th century, most of their food came from their gardens. Yeah. Okay. So they were horticulturalists.
What do they get other than plantains?
Some grow manioc, tubercles. They have tobacco as well. And some other fruits, that they would grow.
Do they do the cassava at all?
Some regions do. Yeah. Yeah. The area where I guess my origin story takes place, the plantain was their staple crop. Okay. And that kind of came out of my father's research, or at least that knowledge came out of my father's research when he studied, their dietary and food intake. And then as far as, the language, they had a counting system of 1, 2, and then anything after 2 was just many. So no need to, yeah.
So 1, 2, a lot.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, right, there's no reason to have 3 of anything or 5 of anything.
Right.
I'm not going to say, I really want to make 5 bows and arrows today. You only need 1 to hunt.
3 berries is now you're working on a handful. It's exactly. So we found 1 berry. It's okay, well, where are the rest of them?
And there's no currency. There's no money. Money means, at least, our form of currency, it just doesn't exist.
It's just a really utilitarian form of counting.
Yeah. And everything, and they live a life based on reciprocity. So let's say, for example, you kill a peccary. Okay. You bring home the peccary, and it's customary for them to really share all the meat with the rest of the villagers. In some cases, they won't even, eat, the meat themselves. Mm. And then maybe his brother or an uncle will kill a anaconda, and then that meat will get shared. So I think it's a kind of a social, evolutionary measure that allowed these people to survive in like a really harsh and dangerous ecosystem. I mean, it looks harsh and dangerous to us, but for them, they've really found a way to just live in harmony and sustainability with the Amazon rainforest. So that's kind of like the backdrop of how for my dad when he went in, coming from the streets of Philadelphia where he grew up, to the Yanomami village in the Amazon jungle. And then when he started living among them and working and started learning the language, you know, he really felt the essence of what it was to be a human being. At least these are his words, right? Because he found a people that were so strong, happy, healthy, and you were never alone. You never experienced loneliness, depression, suicide just doesn't exist in Yanomami society. And I think my dad, you know, gravitated towards that. And so what was supposed to be a simple research project ended up being a span of 12 years living among the Yanomami people.
How did he extend his research? Because like, would he just like keep applying for grants and like funding to like?
Yeah. And it's funny because now I'm in that, I'm at that stage, and my father was at, you know, like constantly trying to find funding for research. So yes. So he couldn't stay there like forever. He had to go out and renew permits and get more funding. And eventually he had to finish his PhD.
What kind of permits?
Well, it was a federal territory at the time in Amazon, so in Venezuela. So you do have to get, you know, permits from the government, you know, military and government permits to enter the territory. And if you leave, fine. But to re-enter the territory, you had to get permits.
Gotcha. Okay, I understand.
And then, so, you know, fast forward a little bit, and he learned their language fluently. He hunted with them, trekked with them, and lived with them. And that's when he met my mom. And my mom was the daughter of the headman of the community.
What do you mean the headman? Because we had talked a little bit, and when I was asking how to describe this to somebody, we talked about, I was like, do you refer to them as a people or as like a tribe, or like, what do you do? And you said, it's not a tribe. Why is that?
Yeah, as it was explained to me, they're not, you know, they're the Yanomami. Good question. They're, you know, roughly between 25, 30,000 populations dispersed. Really? Yeah. Or, in their territory across Venezuela and Brazil. So they're known to be the largest, you know, one of the largest, you know, indigenous populations, Amazonian populations. And they live in one of the biggest, you know, territories of Amazonia. So, yeah, they're not like tribe in a sense where they, you know, they don't really, you know, identify themselves as a single people, under a single leadership or political system. Every village is its own autonomous unit. So
is it almost like an ethnic group?
In a way, yeah. You know, in a way, yeah. But there are cohesions in that they have same language, same spiritualities, and, you know, same cultural norms and practices. But they're also broken up in dialects. So there's some Yanomami groups in Venezuela that have different dialects from the Yanomami, let's say in Brazil, and it's kind of like Spanish and Portuguese, I guess you could say. So there's no like the United Chamanos of the Yanomami people or something like that, you know. So with that said, I was trying to remember where we were going back to, but like, you know, my dad had to renew permits and visas.
Oh, like the head, like the tribal structure.
Yeah. So going back to that, the headman he's like the leader of the Chagnon, not like leader of the people, but of that single village, right?
He's kind of like influencing what happens between 20 and, you know, 50 people, not 35,000 people across like the thing. Like there's no president of the Yanomami. Right,
exactly. So he's headman only because the village wants him to be headman. He happens to be a great hunter or a great shaman or, you know, a great orator. And as a headman, there's no special, you know, perks for being headman. He still has to hunt. He has to fish. He has to take care of his family. So when you walk into a Yanomami village, you never know who the leader is, you know, until someone points that person out. So, what would
they like use him for? Like if they have something they can't agree on, like they go, what do you think, man?
Maybe when someone is sick, you know, they think he's a really good shaman. So he would be the one to, you know, engage within the spirit realm. and to help heal the sick. And maybe he'll make some political decisions, like it's time to pick up and go for a WAYUMI, or maybe big decisions, that would affect the community he would be most likely involved in.
For instance, would it be like, hey, we're going to let Ken Good hang out for 12 years? Would that be like the kind of decision that he'd be involved in?
Yeah, or the decision that would maybe betroth his, not younger daughter, sorry, younger sister, to marry, my dad. So things like that. So, decision, and that's a huge decision right there. Yeah. So, a lot of that story about my dad meeting my mom is portrayed in his autobiographical memoir, his memoir, Into the Heart. So, I obviously wasn't alive and I didn't live that experience, but I know what I know from conversations with my dad and reading his book, actually, to know what it's like to be an outsider, then being part of the community, and then falling in love with, one of the Yanomami women. So, and she took a liking to my dad as well. And so they married according to Yanomami customs,
tell me about that. Like, I'm interested in, and this is, you can't speak for your dad. Mm-hmm. You can tell me sort of what you know based upon what's in his memoir and what like he's put out there and maybe what he's told you. I'd be interested to know about, like, what is that like when somebody from the culture that you're studying goes, hey, you should like marry my sister. Like, I mean, seriously though, like what?
Well, yeah, I guess, obviously it didn't happen from the beginning. When he learned the language, because he was called, what's it, Akaporaba, which means like ghost tongue. He didn't know how to speak the language, which is crazy because like the Yanomami never knew that there were other humans that could not speak Yanomami.
Really?
So you imagine how isolated you are, that you just like, you don't have this concept that there are other people that speak other languages, And so my dad was like, made first contact with several communities, or at least in the sense where those people had never seen a white person before, and let alone a white person with glasses and a beard, because they don't have facial hair. Right. And so it was really, really strange, really unique for them to see that. But then when my dad didn't know what to call an ant, he would say, "What's this?" They couldn't believe that my dad didn't know what an ant was,
right?
But he wanted to explain to them, like, I want to know how to say this in your language.
Yeah, he's like, I know what that is. I'm not like unfamiliar with an ant, but I don't know how to call it.
They've never been asked that question. Like, how do you say in your language? It's like, what does that mean? There's just language. What do you mean your language? My language.
We all
speak
this shit.
Yeah. So they all thought when my dad was learning the language, they're like, look at this idiot. He doesn't know what a tree, he doesn't know what a tree is. He doesn't know what an ant is. He doesn't know what a rock is. And he's trying to figure out how to say these things in Yanomami. But then the years went by and he really commanded the language and really, became family. And as part of the family, when you're plugged into a kinship network, made up of your cousins and aunts and brothers and whatnot, that really is something very special. And as being kinship, it would be unnatural for you to not have a wife or to not be married, for example, And so that's how, how he became part of that cultural norm of the Yanomami way of life. And my mom, I can't speak for my mom or whatever, but she took a liking to my dad and she wanted to marry him. So she did.
So it's almost like well, shit, if you're going to be here anyway, like we need to get you set up. Like, here's your wife. Like, is that like kind of like when you're talking about, I'm trying to like imagine, like being part of this kinship and then they identify this problem like, oh, well, like he's with us, but like we need to like get him like totally set up here if he's going to be with us. And like, was it a function of that basically?
Yeah, so to speak. Yeah. I mean, because for them it's just, unnatural, to not have a partner, and he explains in his book, love, it's not like this Shakespearean notion of love where you're like, give him roses and you bend on the knee and you like say, I love you and you're the love of my life and stuff like that. That's that. But in Yanomami culture, there is those sentiments, those feelings,
right?
but marriage is very practical. Like you need each other to survive. Like I'm going to marry you because if I don't marry you, I'm going to go hungry, you know? Yeah. I mean, I'm oversimplifying, but like that's kind of the idea.
It's not like a westernized version of like, you know, this kind of luxury bent of love. It's like very utilitarian. It's like, if you do not have a partner and we are playing a game where everybody has a partner, you will not do well at that game.
And if we want our village to continue to be a village, you need to have kids.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Yeah. And I only say that because, I mean, maybe we'll get back this, it'll harken back to this story. But when I went down there as an adult, you know, I was offered a wife as well. And I'm just like, I'm like, I don't know what this means or how it goes, but, thanks.
Yeah. You're like,
you know, but that kind of told me or taught me that because I have Yanomami blood, I am automatically part of that kinship network. So it's almost like I automatically have a wife through some kinship ties, you know?
Yeah. You're like, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I understand. I do want to get back to that later.
Yeah.
But, so in furthering the narrative of your father and his wife or soon to be wife, wherever we're at in the story.
Yeah.
What happens?
And so I guess, you know, it's not uncommon for the wife to move into your husband's village if he's from a different village.
Okay.
But, you know, just as much as my mom showed him her world, she really wanted to get to know his world and he wanted to show her his. And so they agreed, yeah, let's go to my people, the village of New Jersey, you know, or Pennsylvania. And then this is where my family is. And so it became this big adventure, this grand adventure. And I think, you know, I'd like to think that my mom, you know, was really excited for this, but she did not know what was beyond the tropical borders, right? She did not know.
Did you exist at this point in time?
At this, no, not. I was actually, my mom was pregnant with me, and this would not fly today because she was like 8.5 months pregnant with me when she flew or something like that. Or I was, you know, she's very, very, very pregnant. Yeah. I don't think they would allow you to fly that.
Was that a motivation for the trip as well? Maybe to like get, so that you would be born in a modern.
I don't know. That's a dad question. You know,
yeah, I guess that's true.
Did he want me born down there or do you want me born up here? I don't know. Because, you know, like if I can understand like being a parent, like if there's a complication, there's no hospital.
Yeah. I want to be able to deal with it.
It's just life, you know, the baby doesn't survive. But as Westerners, we're like, no, we have advanced medicine. We can make this. Yeah, we can deal with it. So maybe that could be, I don't know. I'm just speculating here. But, so they landed, you know, actually Philadelphia, area. And then I was born soon after. Yeah. In 86. And, soon we became this unique intercultural, you know, family, that was one foot in the world of Pennsylvania and the other foot in the world of the jungle. And so for the first 5-6 years of my life, I lived between two worlds. And, soon after my brother was born, my sister was born, and kind of made some international, you know, attention. We were featured on National Geographic Explorer. My dad was in like People magazine. There were like film options being made about our story. I was just a kid at the time, so I didn't know. Well,
can I ask you a few questions about like the immediate, before I ask that question about, the Western medicine and like, you know, the advantages of having you born in, you know, Jersey or whatever. Mm-hmm. You were starting to say like, you know, your mother had never been beyond the jungle. And again, I know you can't speak for your mom, but like there are a couple interesting things that happened in that context.
Yeah.
Flying on planes, seeing vehicles, food, all sorts of this like really profound stuff.
Yeah, good point. You know, mom. So my mom's name is Yarima.
Yarima?
Yarima. Yeah. So it's kind of her nickname.
Okay.
Yarima means windy. So she's born on a windy day is her nickname. And it's actually, she has a real Yanomami name, given name, but it's taboo to ever speak that name aloud. So
really?
Yeah, I won't say it here. But
among them, even among themselves?
Yes, but not in a very hush-hush, quiet way. Yeah.
Huh. What's the purpose of that?
It's a good question, but you know, it's like it's your real. It's like I see it as your real name tied to your soul, and if you say it out loud, you become vulnerable to the never ending attack of spirits, you know. And so if your name is said out loud, it could cause, or at least in their opinion, could cause like disease or misfortune or things like that, you know, or yeah. And
is it like a really intimate thing? Would like your significant other use your name?
No. We would give each other's nicknames. So like, you know, I could say Sua for a woman, you know, or Naka for a girl. You know, they could call me Moka as a term of endearment, or usually like, you know, son of somebody or cousin, or, you know, Shoape means uncle, things like that, all those nicknames. But, but they'll never say your real name unless, you know, you intend to do harm to that person, or you intend to really, you know.
Oh, that's like, we're going to fight.
Yeah. Either physically or in the spirit world, you know? So
dude, I take this, I would take the physical one for sure. I don't want to fight anybody in the spirit world, man.
Yeah. So
one more time, what is your mother's?
Yarima. Yeah. So that's her name. Yeah. Yarima. And yeah, no, she does not take kindly if you say her real name out loud. So yeah, I'll keep that a secret. Yeah.
So she's having these experiences. Can you like kind of go through some of like
Yarima, you know, I can only imagine what it would be like for a Yanomami woman who entire life, you know, is from the forest. She has no concept of kind of, you know, the cycles of life and time is completely dictated by the forest, right? And then then this giant bird lands from the sky, and this bird opens its stomach, and you climb into the stomach of this bird. And then it just takes you far, far away into this world.
And this is how she's internalizing all this. Did she tell you this is how she's internalized this? Or are you imagining with somebody's conceptualization?
Like what, an airplane? Yeah. No, my dad, I think, told me these stories. Yeah. Bits and pieces he told me growing up. And then like, you know, and then think New York City, right? And you go from a world where like, you know everybody. And then when you stop by somebody, like you're walking on a trail, you stop, you say hello, you know, and you talk. Now you can imagine thousands of people just scurrying around. She said they're like ants. I don't know if you've seen just ants just scurrying around. And they just seem mean and nasty and cold.
Oh, dude, bumping into you on the sidewalk. Yeah. Like if I went from one of those things to like being bumped into, I would cry. Like on the spot, I would just like break down and be like, I don't understand any of the rules we're playing by now.
And a sidewalk was extremely interesting and strange to her. You know, she lived her whole life barefoot, walking on the forest, you know, the rainforest. Now there's concrete everywhere. You know, loud cars. And my dad used to say when somebody had started up a Jeep and that sound of the ignition, right? I think the only thing she could relate that to is the sound of a jaguar roaring or something like that, you know? So she thought it was an animal like ready to pounce on her. So she ran and hid behind the bush. Yeah.
I mean, it's not crazy. It's like, it's like a totally like logical thought process, but I mean,
so it's kind of like, you know, I have culture shock if I travel to like Germany and I don't know like, you know, how to speak the language. I can only imagine for my mom the extreme culture shock she must have felt. And it's like a sci-fi movie where you just like a portal opens and you walk through a portal and you're just a completely alien world, you know? And so that was my mom's experience, but she kind of adapted after, you know, I think, you know, she was very resilient, I think. I mean, if it was me, my mind would have cracked.
I don't know what I would have done.
I would have, taken my clothes off and started running, you know, naked into the streets, just going crazy. Yeah. But my mom, I think she's a special kind of lady. I think she was very resilient and she had my dad to depend on, but that's the problem. She only had my dad to depend on. She couldn't call upon her sisters to go fishing or creeking. She, you know, her brothers don't come home with meat, like, you know, hunting. And she can't like, you know, hear the sounds of her older brother chanting to the spirits. So it became very isolating, she became very estranged in this world.
Her whole village is one dude now.
Yeah, exactly. And my dad obviously is a different, you know, I understand he had to find a job, you know, in this world, you need money to pay bills, get food, taxes, a roof over your head. These are problems that Yanomami don't have. And she she can't really understand why my dad had to go to work. And she became very like bitter and angry about this whole thing. And then let alone we were just little kids. I mean, she never had to change a diaper before. She never had to, all these things. So if you can imagine like what it means to be a mother, she doesn't know how to be a mom in the United States. It must have like ripped so much of her identity out.
For sure.
Yeah.
So you say, we were just little kids and you're talking about your two siblings. This is over a period of how long is she in the States at this point?
Period of like 5-6 years. Yeah.
And one of the interesting things is like, I know what, Yarima looks like, both in the context of the Yanomami folks, but also in the context of like New Jersey Yarima.
Mm-hmm.
For people only listening to this, can you describe maybe your mother in her indigenous like kind of daily life, what she looks like, and then the New Jersey version? I think it's like really interesting.
Yeah. Well, kind of goes back to what we were saying. This is sort of like, her, this hard to reconcile herself as a Yanomami, person in Philadelphia. So, in the jungle, she, life is very different. She'll have, they're called he sticks. So they pierce their lower lip and through the nasal septum. So they put these little sticks in their lower lip and the septum and and it's like, it's just adornment, right? Like, I mean, it's not unique. We have lip rings and nose rings, right?
Yeah.
But, they like doing that down there, and it's just a sign of beauty and youth. And, oftentimes, they'll have a notosi, like a red pigment, from the seed that they'll paint over their faces. And, for the most part, they're, basically, topless, because it's so, it's hot. Well, they just don't have clothes, right? And they'll just wear skirts or loincloths, barefoot. And every day that they'll, what I love about the Yanomami way of life is you wake up in the morning and all you need to figure out is like, what am I going to eat today and how am I going to get it? And you do that communally with your family. Cool. So she'll go to the nearby creeks with her sisters and her nieces, and they'll go crabbing, or maybe they'll go fishing, or they'll go to the garden and get some plantains, or maybe they need to collect firewood. There's always something to do every day. And she's barefoot. She's just like this. If you see a picture of her, she's just like this strong Amazonian woman, of the rainforest, master of her domain. Plug her into New Jersey, like, diapers, TV, what, like Gerber food, baby bottles, like it's just really foreign to her. But she started learning after a while. And some of the memories I have, she adopted that 1980s, like big hair perm
I was going to say, dude, because one of the defining characteristics I see in all of these photos previously is this like bowl cut thing.
Yeah.
And it's like everybody has it. It's like a traditional hairstyle there.
It is, yeah.
And then she gets to New Jersey and all of a sudden it's like fucking permed up and shit.
Yeah. So I think she really enjoyed, like shopping and she really like, a lot of the fashion cultural stuff, because, it's not different. I mean, the Yanomami, they like painting themselves. It's like ornamentation. There you go. Yeah. So she enjoyed that. And she learned how to use a VCR and how to, play, the shows on the TV. And then I remember, it's funny, I had a memory of like walking. We lived in Rutherford, New Jersey at the time. And I have a memory of walking with mom to our local Dunkin' Donuts and just getting like a donut, like almost every day. And this is back when my dad was a college professor. Sure. And he would just like leave her like a $20 bill and said, and would tell her, this is what you can buy with a $20 bill. And she had, she thought it was probably so funny, like you hand them a $20 bill and then you get money back, and it's just like really, she didn't know what was going on, but she just learned how to
She's like, I know I can get this, this, and this with this, and I'm going to give them some of this. They're going to give me some of it back, plus this thing.
Wait till she learned what a credit card was.
Oh, no.
She's like, yeah, just give me this. She didn't know like there's limits and stuff like that. So
did she just go nuts with it?
I have no idea, but I think but I think she expected my dad to like, just give him the credit card and what, she doesn't know what bank accounts are.
Oh my God. Well, I can see like how that would make work so confusing, because in everything else, the guy leaves, he comes back with something very tangible and very immediately useful. He keeps going back and she's like, what'd you get? And he's like,
money.
There are some numbers in a computer now. Like
exactly. How the heck is she supposed to, understand that? So yeah. So I appreciate, taking the time to explain this, because what I'm trying to get at is that year after year after year, you can imagine she started sinking into like a depression, loneliness. The only person she could ever speak to in this world was her husband, and her husband would be gone, obviously, because he had to work. So she became very lonely, and I can only imagine. So in 1992 or 91, 92, we were making one of these return trips.
That's one thing that I think we should also mention is during this period of time, periodically, you guys are going back and forth again and again and again. Do you know about how many trips you made back?
I don't know, but it would just be me and mom and my dad going. And then my sister was born actually down there in the jungle.
Yeah.
And we spent some time there. We go back and forth. And my brother was born in New Jersey, and, traveling, taking 3 kids to the jungles back and forth got really expensive. And,
for sure.
And you can imagine like the extra measures you want to take to make sure that you have anti-snake venom, more medicines. And so it became harder for my dad to get the funding to make these return trips. So there would be longer periods of time where we would be in Pennsylvania or New Jersey at the time. So, a lot of those details, are kind of, in the memoir. But what I can say is that we were at an inflection point as a family, and she just could not handle it anymore. She just couldn't handle it. I think she broke, right? So she made the decision to leave the family, to separate, and she's going to remain in the jungle, and the rest of us were going to remain in the US. And of course, there's a lot more story to that and a lot more complications and nuances.
Well, this was on the fly too. You guys were going down there and like, not you so much, you were a participant, but not like hey, let's make a decision together, like kind of participant. But she
it was
informed your dad on the fly.
Yeah, it was very very impulsive, very impromptu. I mean, she just took off, actually. She just ran off into the jungle. And, my dad he was in a tough spot, and he was with my younger brother at the time. So actually my sister and I were here in the States staying with a family member, and it was just my mom and my brother down in the Amazon. And my dad wanted to go bring the whole family together again, but she couldn't. She said, I can't return. I can't come back,
So she had been there by herself.
Yeah.
Your dad went down to go
get her. Yeah.
And she was just like,
that's it. Yeah. And, obviously this sparked all kinds of dialogues and conversations throughout the years.
Sure.
How could a mom ever leave her kids? All those things. And obviously as being one of her kids, I grew up wondering why, but then as you got to understand the nuances and the many layers of our complex family history,
sure.
I came to understand why she left. And when she did leave, that's when I lost my mom, and I wouldn't see her for 20 years.
That's a really, dude, you're a grown ass man. That's a nuanced and mature take, that can only be developed through, a innate sense of empathy that you like clearly have. And it can only be developed through, I feel like, nearly a quarter century of reflection and like, wondering and turning that coin over and over and over again. I'd imagine that took a long time to get to.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Do you remember some of your, because you were like 6 years old?
Yeah. 5, 6 years old. Yeah.
Do you remember having any particular like thoughts? Did it like occur to you right away that that's what had happened?
Well, there's many things happening during that time as a 5 and 6 year old. Cause I was speaking Yanomami, you are speaking to your mom, and, we had this, obviously mother-son bond.
Sure.
And, at the time I didn't see her as this like, jungle woman, or these crazy headlines at the time, like Stone Age woman and all those things that you wouldn't say today.
You saw it in the same way as if your mother was like a French woman and like you went back to France every now and then.
Yeah. So she was just mom, she's my mom, she took care of me, she fed me, she, chastised me, everything, all the memories I had, I just felt like, didn't really make any, difference. But then when she left, that's kind of like when I felt like the wall, like a wall was removed, and I just completely became aware of how different, she was, and how different I was becoming in this, US society and Western culture. And when I feel like when she left, because when you're only 6 years old, you don't know what to think, but I internalized it as abandonment. I just said, okay, I wasn't good enough to be her son, and she did not want to be my mom. So I basically said, okay, fuck you. I don't want to be Yanomami. I don't want to have anything associated with Yanomami. I renounced my identity. I renounced my heritage. And year after year, that's how I developed my identity. And it's not a very healthy way of doing it, because as a 6-year-old losing your mom, I've dealt with a lot of trauma. Here's this person that I depended on, loved, and then all of a sudden is gone. So, through the next, I would say 20 years, I went through this very tumultuous time, and through my development and my teen years and younger 20s of trying to figure out who I was as a person, trying to figure out why I experienced so much pain from my mother leaving. And then, trying to figure out my identity as a Yanomami person, because even though I renounced it, when I look in the mirror, I see my mom, Yeah.
I mean, you do look real similar. Like it's in the,
yes.
It's in the eyes, man. It's in the eyes, and it's in like, well, do you mind if I ask you a couple more questions?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
Was there a point in time where, was anger ever like something you felt?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you hate your mom?
Anger. Oh yeah, for sure. It was a sort of, kind of a dual mode of, emotions between anger and hurt, cause I hated her, but I missed her,
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think that particular cocktail of emotions is something that, in different contexts, a lot of people can relate to.
For sure. Yeah.
Was there a particular like zenith of these like bad feelings? Like, can you remember like a time like 17, 18, like something like that where, you were just like, dude, I'm like as mad as I can be about this? Well,
I guess, obviously adolescence is, challenging time, and I didn't, it was interesting growing up. I was always very good in school, but I couldn't stay out of trouble. And I was
like, what?
Like, I don't know, just kind of like silly things from just walking out from the class, just not showing up. Just, I don't remember things that always got me into tension.
Just acting out.
Yeah. But I was also at the same time, I was a kid that was like in honors AP classes. And I remember like I skipped a math class for like 2 weeks. I'm like, screw this. I'd rather teach myself math in a coffee shop than go to class. And then I'd show up, take the test, and got 100 on it. And then the teacher's like, you need to come to class, things like that.
Yeah.
So, but I went through this like, but then that's not sustainable. Right. So like, at times I would just totally crash, I would just like fail every class, and then of course, one of the challenging parts, the adolescence is just like now I'm trying to figure out like who I am in this world, like identifying myself with my peers and in this culture, in this society. But I'm starting off on a different foot because because of the trauma that I didn't get to cope from losing mom.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I have a memoir called The Way Around, and I'll explain why it's called The Way Around in a bit. But yeah, I do describe how I felt like I hit some low points, and some of these low points, you know, where I've even had, you know, suicidal thoughts because, you know, I had points in my life where I'm like, I don't feel anything, you know, like I'm laughing with my friends, like I'm playing baseball, but I feel like I'm just acting. I feel like I'm not really, I don't really feel it. I'm just acting these things out. And so, yeah, I, you know, went through some challenging times in my life where, you know, I thought, you know, I would hurt myself just to feel something, you know, but I guess, you know, I was always reminded, like, I would say, why am I behaving this way? And it always came back to like losing mom, you know, and I never dealt with it. And so when I got into my younger 20s, you know, where I felt like, you know, my depression is sinking in more and more, I just decided, you know, that like, well, I'm going to try to fix this. And I know that like, I'm going to have to compartmentalize. I'm going to have to go, you know, get past my pride a little bit, compartmentalize my fears and just go back to the roots of who I was as a Yanomami person. So I started reading my dad's book for the first time. I started learning more about the Yanomami, became curious. And I felt like the more I got to learn and understand who they are as a people, I just felt like I was getting closer and closer to mom. And then I finally got to a point where like, okay, well, I learned as much as I could. I read every book, read every article, talked to my dad for hours on end. And after I graduated in 2011, I said, this is it. Like, I feel like the next step in my life is to embark on this mission, on this quest, to go back to my homeland in the Amazon and try to find my mom.
What was your dad saying to you at this point in time? Was he always like approaching this situation with like a sense of empathy? Was he like, you know, it's more complicated than your mom just like it is and it isn't more complicated than your mom just running back into the woods and like that was it?
Well, he was left with I lost mom, but like he lost the love of his life. He lost his wife and he was hurting real bad. Yeah. And I can only imagine my dad tried to do the impossible. He tried to have a foot in two worlds. And I think he tried to create a life where you can go back and forth and back and forth. And I respect him for trying to do that. I just don't think it just worked out. It was just too hard, you know, either mom was going to live permanently here in the US, you know, maybe make several trips back sometimes, or as a family, we were going to permanently live in the jungle. And I'm sure there were points in our lives where we had those options. But anyway, you know, he lost his, you know, so I can only imagine the type of pain he felt growing up, you know, as I was growing up. And so we never really talked about, you know, mom's leaving. And it was just, you know, kind of like. What
about when you got more curious?
Yeah. Well, when I got more curious, I know it stirred things back up. And I think it allowed my dad, you know, to kind of express some, you know, his emotions and feelings to me about the events surrounding my mom's leaving. I got to learn a lot more details and events about why she left and what had happened. And it's a very complex and complicated story because, you know, there were attempts throughout the years to reconnect with my mom. But how do you reconnect with her? There's no way to call her. There's no way to email her.
By your dad or like on a family basis?
Intermediaries. You know, we tried to send messages through intermediaries. It just didn't work out, you know, and she's just so deep and remote in the Amazon, you know, it's just hard to maintain communication. So it got to the point where like, okay, well, we came to an acceptance. Mom's going to stay down there and we're going to stay up here. Yeah. Yeah. So then when I started talking about, you know, wanting to find my mom, you know, I think it stirred up a lot of, you know, old pain, but I think at the same time, it allowed him to open up about, you know, what had happened. But then he started, you know, communicating with me a little bit more about things that we've never talked about, you know, about the events surrounding my mom's leaving. And then I guess he kind of, you know, also became a little intrigued about who the Yanomami are today, in 2011 versus the 1970s.
As an anthropologist.
Yeah, as an anthropologist. And so, he felt bad that he didn't have any more connections, in Venezuela to help me out, but that's okay. I made a very, very special connection with an anthropologist, Hortensia Caballero, living in Venezuela, and she took me under her wing. But my dad gave me a list of things to say, in Yanomami. Yeah. Things like, you piss me off, or I'm hungry, or leave me alone. Things that he thought that might be helpful for me. I think, I'm like, this is a weird list, Dad. But then when I got down there, I'm like, oh yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. This is a good list.
This is a good list. So we bonded in a way to have that familiarity, but it also became an inflection point where I'm splitting off, and this is my journey. This is my life, and I'm creating my own, my own path. And my dad that was his path, his story, and, he makes his own ending. But this is the point in my life where I spent 20 years in deep depression. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make my story, and whatever ending is going to be my ending. So that's why in 2011, I said, screw this. I'm going to go find Mom. And what's crazy is that at that time, I've never camped a day in my life. I did not know how to start a fire. I'm this suburban kid, right? In suburbia, New Jersey, in Pennsylvania, in Easton. I was deathly afraid of bugs. Like, I know it sounds weird, but
that's going to be a big problem.
If there was a ladybug, if a ladybug started walking across, I would tense up with fear. Yeah, I had an extreme fear of bugs. And I did not speak Spanish at the time, and I spoke no Yanomami. So I was like, and my family, my sister, they're pretty concerned for me, and they're like, Dave, you do realize there's a lot of big bugs in the jungle, right?
Well, we're gonna talk about everything that transpired in the jungle and the journey down there, the journey to find Mom.
Yeah.
When we get back, we'll be right back. Hey everybody, this episode of the Backcountry Manifesto podcast is coming to you with a mission. It's no surprise that our guest, David Good, has some pretty strong connections to Venezuela, including a lot of beloved colleagues. And of course, recently, Venezuela has been struggling in the aftermath of 2 over 7 magnitude earthquakes. It's terrible. Billions of dollars in damage, thousands of lives lost, and tens of thousands of people displaced. So per his suggestion, we're encouraging you to donate to WeLove.Foundation. That's WeLove.Foundation. We're going to be making a donation. We encourage you to do the same. This is a thoroughly vetted charity, again, at David's suggestion, that he believes is going to have a really positive impact on the Venezuelan people struggling in the aftermath of this tragedy. So join us in making a donation. Once again, that's WeLove.Foundation. You'll make a big impact. Thanks. We're back. We're talking to David Good about the Yanomami people, his mother, and the journey to go find her in the Amazon after years of a really hard period. Where did you...
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, if you listen to that first part, you will know exactly what we're kind of hinting at, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. And I promise we're getting to the point of why I'm doing research.
Microbiome. So you're 22?
When I decided to go find Mom, I was 24. Yeah.
24. Yeah. Okay. You've made the decision. You realize that you're maybe not the most likely candidate to make a trek about would it be fair? How deep are we talking about in the Amazon?
Yeah. So to put in perspective, you got to fly. I fly into the capital city of Venezuela, Caracas. Mm-hmm. And then there I rendezvous with Hortensia, she's an anthropologist that studied the Yanomami for 30 years or so. And she took me under her wing, and together we decided to go on this journey. And so from there, There's multiple ways of getting into it, but so I'll just describe, in a general sense. Sure. So I'll just describe in a general sense that, you fly into Venezuela, and then we get on another flight from Caracas into Ayacucho, which is the capital of the Amazonas state of Venezuela, in southern Venezuela. And then we take another flight to go deeper into the territory to a military checkpoint called La Esmeralda. And then you get on a boat, and it's about 3, 4, sometimes 5 days going up the Orinoco River. And depending on whether it's rainy season or dry season.
Who's taking you up there? Just
contacts, friends.
Are they I know some of them are missionaries and fishermen.
Some are, lots of times they're missionaries, actually. Yeah, because they stay there for long periods of time. So they have
Christian missionaries.
You have the evangelical missionaries and the Protestant missionaries. I'm sorry, the Protestant missionaries and the Catholic missionaries. So yeah.
Which ones are the evangelicals?
Either the Protestants are more the evangelicals, and the Catholics are more from the Salesian Church. They're called Salesianos, so the Church of Don Bosco, which is originated in Italy. I don't know its whole history, but all I know it's the Catholics versus the Protestants trying to compete for the souls of the Yanomami, and that's all I'll say about that. I'm not gonna get more involved in that. But nevertheless, a lot of them have become friends, and they helped with a lot of logistics. Even today, some Yanomami have their own motors and boats, that, we can coordinate for transportation. But nevertheless, it's about 4 or 5 days up the Orinoco River. If it's rainy season, the river's really high, you can use like a 45 horsepower, outboard motor.
You can crank.
But if it's really low, you can use like a 15, but you're going really slow. And also you run the risk of constantly hitting the sandbanks, and you got to pull the boat across sandbanks. And then of course the rapids, the Guajaripo Rapids, which is an infamous set of rapids where it has these strong currents. They kind of meander around these boulders, creating these hydraulics, right? So, which is fine if you got a small speedboat. But if you have a longer, metal boat with cargo, it can be pretty risky. So once I cross the Guajaripo Rapids, it's about another, maybe half a day to get to the area where my mom, village is located. And the thing is that the Yanomami are semi-nomadic people. They don't live and settle in one spot permanently, at least, not traditionally. And that's because the Amazonian ground is not fertile for long-term agriculture. And so they practice what's called slash and burn horticulture, where they burn the underbrush that fertilizes the ground and allows them to, plant their plantain trees. And it can yield enough food to last them maybe 2-3 years, but they're constantly having to make new gardens throughout the territory, throughout their region. So they're never living in one spot.
Do they return to the previous ones ever?
They can, yeah. Depends on the state of the garden, yeah. Or maybe they'll clear out another area, to make a garden. Depends on like drainage and things like that. And how close you are to a nearby water source, like a creek or whatever, And so that's the challenge, is that nobody can exactly say, mom's here or there. You just got to go further and further closer to the territory until you start asking other people, is Yarima here? Is she alive? And that's like the first question we ask.
It's a moving target.
Alive. Yeah, it's a moving target. Yeah.
You said it, but it was like we were kind of talking about something else. You don't know if she's dead or alive.
Yeah. And then I've gotten, reports that she's alive, but that's the thing, I've come to learn is that, something can happen in my village and it can be like 3 months until I hear about it. So, and so when I got closer and I heard that she was alive, I was really, happy to hear, that she was alive. And then,
well, can I ask you a question there? I would presume that was, so you've made this really long trek to get to where you're going. You have crossed this set of rapids and all the other types of obstacles that exist within this Amazonian environment. You have gotten into the territory where you can reasonably expect to encountered the Yanomami,
Mm-hmm.
you, after all these years, you've made your first contact with somebody of the Yanomami on their home turf.
Yeah.
What's that like?
Well,
Can you like describe could you describe the experience both in like a narrative way and like a introspective way?
what's interesting is I first met my first Yanomami person, so to speak, in the city, actually.
Really?
Yeah, which is really interesting, in Puerto Ayacucho. And they knew, obviously, everyone knows the story of Yarima. She's like, an idol down there. She's kind
of famous.
She's super famous down there. Yeah. Across the world, but certainly down there. And she, so I met these two Yanomami, and I guess my first encounter was like, they're wearing like jeans and a t-shirt and a hat, and
and you're just like, oh, these are just dudes.
Yeah. And it's like, you read these textbooks, like, like this is what the Yanomami are, and this is how they behave, and this guy's like, lighting up a cigarette.
You're like city. Waiting for like,
I'm like, wait, and you got to keep in mind, I have some preconceived notions of who the Yanomami are and how they behave, as a Westernite, so like these kind of like, like these tribal peoples and the way they're described in the press and the media. So I had this notion that like, this is going to be crazy. And this guy's like, like, hey, how you doing? He's got his jeans and a t-shirt and a hat. Like, it's my first Yanomami encounter. But then as we got into the territory, I met more, obviously, Yanomami, but they were not they're not my family. They're not my community. So it's like, it's not, and they live near missions. So they're not like fully kind of out there. They're very, they're very much integrated. A lot of them are very much integrated and dominant.
Are they dressed in like traditional ways, or are they dressed
a little bit of both? Yeah,
okay.
You see it. Yeah. And they speak Spanish and whatnot. So, but then when you get deeper and deeper and deeper, I notice the change, right? Like, oh, there's a lot less wearing of clothes, and I don't see a lot of like, Western, goods and stuff. And
people aren't wearing baseball hats and not wearing sunglasses.
Yeah. Or like, people that are near missions have access to like shotguns, for hunting. Whereas you go deeper, like, oh, they only have bows and arrows. And so that was like, when you go deeper and deeper and the river becomes more and more narrow, and everything seems bigger. Everything seems like the trees are bigger. You just feel that sense of like remoteness, like, wow, we are really, really far away. And then finally we get to the trailhead that leads to the village of Hasapue, or, the people that my dad lived with for so long. And so we said, hey, this is David, son of Yarima.
They're like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. And then they're like, is she here? She's like, yeah, she's not in the village. She's out in the gardens getting plantains, but we can go get her. And then they said, get out of the boat. We want to see you. And just keep in mind, like, none of this can happen without, like the support of the missionaries and Hortensia translating for me. Cause, like I said, I didn't know any of the language, and I was afraid of bugs, and that was it, so I get out of the boat, and I was immediately mobbed by the Yanomami people, and I was just experiencing culture shock, because I'm like, what is going on?
Were you scared?
Yeah, a little bit. I'm like, what is happening? So they like, there was like, they all crowded around me. They had like, they started like touching my nose, pulling my ear, and I guess I have facial hair. They don't have facial hair, so they're just like constantly rubbing my chin. They were like putting their hands down the pockets of my jeans. I don't know if they were like looking for stuff to take, and they were like pulling on my shirt, and they were just speaking a language I had no idea what they were saying. And so they were like, so they said, well, while we're waiting for your mom, let's set up your hammock. So they set up my hammock in the village, right? So we're in the village around this fire and this hearth. And again, they just started talking, and I'll show you a picture, and to kind of add, to this moment. And again, they was just touching my nose, pulling my ear. But then I realized that in this moment, when like in front of me were like 10, like my cousins, aunts, uncles. And when I look at them, I'm like, wow, I'm not just like this like brave explorer or researcher, traveling into the Amazon jungle to be with this, isolated tribal people. And like, this is my family. This is my aunt right here. This is my cousin. Like, these are my people. Like, I look into their eyes. I'm like, wow, they're related to me. I'm related to them. I don't know what they're saying, but I'm related to them. And I remember, like, in that moment, there was only two phrases from my childhood that I like, two full phrases that I remembered from my childhood. And one was, ya ohi, which is I'm hungry. And the other is ya bosi shiiti, which is my butt really itches. So those are the only things I could say at that time.
Probably not crazy useful in the context.
No, but very relevant and yeah, in the jungle. So, you know, so anyway,
what'd you do?
I just sat there laughing nervously, like just having like panic, like a little mini panic, like what's going on, you know. And then finally it was like a whole hour of this, you know. And then, finally, mom walks into the village and, you know, she's carrying a big basket of food, and I don't know what was in the basket, but I immediately recognized her. I'm like, this is my mom. And so I stood up out of my hammock. Everyone got really quiet. The people started like, you know, backing away to clearing a path, you know, and I stood up out of the hammock and I, you know, I didn't know what to do in this moment, you know, like, you know, I wasn't like, is this going to be like one of those Chariots of Fire moments where we're just like running towards each other, right. And like, you know, but all I could do was, you know, she walked towards me and I walked towards her. I couldn't speak Yanomami. She couldn't speak English. So all I did was I just put my hand on her shoulder and I said, "Hey mom, it's me, David, and I'm home." And she immediately, you know, recognized the word mom. And so we just held each other and we just trembled and cried, you know, and that was it, you know? And in that moment, you know, I didn't care why she left. That didn't matter to me anymore. That was in the past. There's nothing I could do to change that. All that mattered to me was that she was alive. And I finally, you know, came full circle and reunited with my long lost mother. And then in that moment, it didn't matter. All I wanted was to start a bright new relationship in the future with my mom, to rediscover who I was as a Yanomami. I, you know, went from detesting my heritage to now being absolutely proud. And we have a lot of catching up to do. And I just wanted to pick up from where I left off.
I mean, that's a tremendous weight lifted that you've been carrying since you were a kid.
Yeah. You know, forgiveness, you know, it comes in many forms and it has many, I think, implications, and, you know, it can do, you know, it's not one simple thing. Right. And I think, you know, I don't think she understood that I was in the process of forgiving her. And I don't know, you know, some people would argue, like, did she deserve my forgiveness? That doesn't matter. What mattered was that I came to a certain point in my life. I came to this sort of, you know, this sort of peace, you know, and the forgiveness was maybe more for myself than it was for her. And of course, with that, I understood, you know, I completely understood why she had to leave, and I completely understood things happened the way they happened. And, you know, things happened the way they did. You know, I could have been a Yanomami hunter, you know, I could have lived in the jungle and I'm sure I would have been happy. But no, I stayed behind in in the US, and I was raised and educated. And now I've come to appreciate, you know, this kind of this fate, you know, that was fallen on me. And now I'm in a position where I feel like, you know, I'm only one of very few members of my community has been educated in Western society. And I feel like I now have, you know, a calling, a reason to be where I am right now and to help, you know, my family and the people deal with some of the challenges that they're dealing with today.
Now, I know what you do for a living now. We're kind of like keeping this like hidden from the listeners, and we're going to get into it in a little bit. Prior to this trip, did you ever expect to go into that field, or was this like
to go into the Amazon?
No, I mean to go into the field, into your career. Did you have any inkling that this was going to be a career path, or was it all about finding mom?
It was all about, I had no idea. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just felt like, you know, this was just a natural step to maybe the healing process, to finding out what I wanted to do in life. And maybe through this journey of rediscovering my identity and heritage as a Yanomami person, I would find my calling. And I did, and over the years, I just became part of the family. I learned I hunted and fished with them and ate their foods. I got malaria like 7 times. I had massive diarrhea many times and went through all these struggles. But what was amazing is that I always had my family, with me every step of the way in the jungle. And that's something that like, I felt like, oh, I know why my dad spent all these years living with them. I mean, life is hard in the jungle. Don't get me wrong, it's hard, but there's something about it that, it's kind of like it's complexity and simplicity at the same time, like really made you feel fulfilled. And you always had your family, you're never alone. And so like, if you're hungry that day, somebody's going to feed you, somebody's going to feed you. And then these little things, like we were joking, right? Like term of endearment, when someone comes up behind you and starts going through your hair looking for bugs and they pick the bugs out, like,
and then eating the bugs.
Then eating the bugs, right? That's like revenge against the bugs. That's why they do it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. But like, I've come to learn that it's such an act of love and friendship and bondness that I've come to really appreciate. And I feel like I've experienced, something that my dad, at a small level, I think, because I didn't live there for 12 years, that my dad experienced. And yeah.
I would imagine that there's also this overwhelming, I would imagine 2 really overwhelming sensations. One, now that you're in a culture that you do not understand, like at this point, is that fair to say?
Yes, very fair.
You are seeing things that terrify you all the time in the way of bugs and I would assume other critters and just like circumstance. I assume that you're seeing a lot of like really mortal problems, whether that's in like, conditions that could be like not treated by modern medicine, or in like just intense mortal circumstance on the way on your trip up, not necessarily within that village, but I'm sure there was stuff that you were very not used to seeing even before you got into the jungle. Is that fair to say?
Down there. Yeah. I mean, I guess I was going through a lot, trying to reconcile a lot, and I'm going through culture shock myself, even though I'm like visiting family, but I'm having culture shock visiting my family. But yeah, I guess you come to appreciate, the fact that like if somebody, breaks a leg,
it's just a broken leg.
Yeah, or somebody gets malaria or tuberculosis,
that's it.
Yeah, that's it. And it's a harsh reality, but and there's certain aspects of Yanomami culture that, may be hard for Westerners.
Like what?
To wrap their heads around, first time I saw like 2 boys wrestling. And so the mom, and then like one was wrestling too hard and made the one cry. And so, in our culture, we're like, all right, break it up, calm down. No, the moms took the kids, gave them poles, and they forced them to exchange blows to the head to settle this dispute.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well,
and then like the kid's head like cracked open and is like bleeding, not cracked open. Sorry.
Right.
But like it was bleeding.
You got cut.
Like, yeah. And I'm like, somebody's going to jail for this, but that's just part of, and what was interesting, and this is what we call sort of ethnocentrism, right? Where you try to, view their culture through your own cultural lens. So I'm like, this is child abuse, and I'm trying to like address the wound and like trying to break up the fight. And then like by doing so, like the kids became scared of me. The parents got angry at me, and my mom like told me, said like,
don't do that shit.
Don't do that. Like, this is how we make their heads strong. This is how we teach them to be strong warriors. This is necessary for them to be successful adults in life. And I was like, oh, okay. So anyway, I'm sorry. Like, that's like one example of like, the harshness that may be hard for Westerners to wrap their heads around. But then I've come to think about, okay, like think about this is one of the harshest ecosystems on the planet. And here's a people that lived here for thousands and thousands of years. They lived it in a way that does not destroy their environment. And they lived, and they, you know, when you think of evolution, right, it's 2025, you know, we have so many handicaps, right, to be able to survive and live in our society. So when you think about advancements, right, like who's the most advanced? And I'm getting a little, you know, flowery here, but like the Yanomami did not need any of these technologies, but yet they're still alive and thriving today. So that kind of makes me feel like, you know, they're a little bit more successful than we are, because my mom, being who she is, protects the environment. Me here, being who I am, the fact that I have to create trash, the fact that I like have to consume resources, you know, I feel like I don't, you know, she's a protector, she conserves. And here, you know, I consume and destroy. I mean, I know that's extreme, you know, rhetoric there.
Right. But it's maybe a little bit more, you know, I think you can allow yourself some more nuance. What you do is pretty worthwhile, but I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. So I over the years, I came to respect, you know, that doesn't mean you don't have to like aspects of their culture. There's certain things I don't like, but like I came to respect, you know, why things are the way they are and why they've lived and survived for so long in the jungle, you know?
What I was driving at when I like kind of started that line of questioning is, you know, the first of this two-part question that I have is, one, did that sense of like you as the other in this context, did that build a big sense of empathy for what your mom went through in the States, and did that make it easier to forgive her?
As I got to know her more and got to know oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it brought perspective, it brought understanding. And keep in mind, I'm not just getting to know her, I'm getting to know like other family members that have never had the experience that my mother had, you know? And I can't imagine, you know, what it would be like for someone, you know, right now going through what my mom went through. Absolutely. And it kind of made me, you know, admire her in a way to be able to, you know, take that journey from the jungles to the US, you know, with all the culture shock and everything.
For sure. Was there that's the other question that I'm particularly curious about is, did you think that there might be a chance that when somebody was like, here she is, that you wouldn't be able to forgive her when push like came, when it was time to like be like, okay, I'm either jumping or I'm not?
No, it's a great point, because up until the moment that I saw my mother for the first time in 20 years, I had no idea if she was going to like me or accept me. Because remember, I went 20 years thinking she left me, abandoned me. I wasn't good enough to be her son. I'm not you know,
she didn't want you.
She didn't want me. I'm not full Yanomami or whatever, you know? So yeah, I went down there thinking that the possibility could be that she rejects me, or it could be that I reject everything, you know?
You're still mad.
Like maybe not just mad, but realize that like I understand that this is who I am, but my life, I was born in Philadelphia, raised, I went to school there, you know, girlfriend there, like everything, my life is no different than my best friend in Easton or any other American kid, you know, in that neighborhood, you know, except from my mom being who she is. So there's that possibility where I went down thinking, okay, I did what I had to do, you know, I had to find closure, but maybe just isn't for me. And so, yeah, you're right. There is that possibility. And I guess thinking back on it, if I did end up, you know, saying, okay, this is it, I don't want to do anymore, I would have respected that decision. If it was like a split alternate universe where, you know, David Good said, that's it, I'm done, I'm going to, you know, stay in Pennsylvania, I would have respected that as well.
Well, you know, I wasn't going to go here necessarily after that. I wanted to go to a slightly like, you know, more rosy thought, or a more rosy question, but and then we're not going to speak for them or whatever, but your siblings, no interest in that.
Yeah, no, yeah, I wouldn't say no interest. It's just that I guess, you know, my sister, you know, married, she married and had kids, and my brother after college had a full-time job. And I think the busyness of life, you know, played a role in not really participating, or at least in reaching out to participate and going down. And then on top of that, I think maybe, you know, I was the oldest. I had the most memories and attachment to mom. And then my younger sister and brother, you know, they maybe have fewer memories and didn't have this sort of maybe this compelling, you know, this urge to go and reunite with mom. But I do think they were certainly interested. And because, you know, they're half Yanomami, and they have a very strong, you know, heritage and an amazing cultural legacy, just as much as I do. Yeah. So
maybe it's more like a practicality thing. They're like, yeah, no, I understand this. And like, I'm really happy that you went down there and did this thing. For me, I don't have those core memories. So really all it does is open up like a realm of complications that would rather just keep maybe neat in this box.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, sure. I mean, we're only talking about it, but I feel like like that would make sense to me. Like that's how I might be about it. I don't know. I've never been confronted with something like that. Well,
if you go to New York City on November 15th at 5:30, there is a documentary called WAYUMI that's premiering.
Oh, we're gonna plug it hard, dude.
I was just joking.
I'm excited because you showed me some of this, and it is amazing.
Yeah.
It really is like a beautiful thing.
Well, just to say that my siblings did eventually reunite with my mom, and it was a very special moment. Yeah.
When did that happen?
We were just about to see it in the.
Oh no! I'm
just kidding. That happened in 2020. Yeah.
Did it? Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's unbelievable. I mean, it's very believable, but it's wonderful. One more question that I have about the reuniting specifically, and this isn't necessarily with your mother. This is with the Yanomami people of this village in which your mother is part. What was it like going, not only are these people like my kin, but also I'm not just a story to them. I'm like somebody that it appears that they've actively thought about for 20 years. And they're not looking at me like, oh, here's this guy that I've heard about. They're going, oh, he's back.
Yeah, son of Yarima. Yep, he's back. So it was an emotional, exactly. So the stories, I don't know what stories were told, but they did say stories were told about, you know, Yarima's kids living in the world of the Naba. Naba means like outsider. And so, so they all knew about me, about my siblings, about my dad. And so, I guess, you know, it goes both ways. Like mom was like a mythical figure in our family, and then she just materializes. So I imagine maybe I was kind of a mythical figure for them. Like they know about a David or, you know, Vanessa or Daniel that exist, but then here I am in the flesh. Right. So it was really exciting, not just for my mom, but for my whole kin. And especially for my uncle, my Shawape.
Dude, I love that video.
Yeah, so my Shawape, he is an elder in the community. He was an elder, and it was a very emotional reunion because he knew my dad. He knew me when I was a kid, and he just embraced me. And that's when he gave me my Yanomami name, which is Anyopoa. And he said in that meeting that like, you are Irokai Teddy. If anyone ever asks, you are, you know, Irokai Teddy, you're Yanomama. I am your uncle. You're my nephew, and your name is Anyopoa. You know, and so he gave me my Yanomami name.
And is that the name that you're not supposed to say out loud?
I don't know, to be honest with you, but I think because I walk between two worlds, maybe it's okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe they forgive that a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. Like my brother his name's Ricky Martin,
Hold on.
Yeah.
We need to talk about that.
Yeah.
You can't escape by that one, man. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, after I met my mom, I met my half brother Ricky, and then I was like, my mind is like, it's like your consciousness. It's like it's fracturing, it's splitting. It's like Yanomami world, Western world. And when I met my brother, I didn't know what to do. Like an idiot, I put my hand out and say, "Hey, how you doing? I'm David." You don't shake hands or anything. It was so weird. It's so awkward. But he goes, Ricky Martin. So somebody gave him the name Ricky Martin, and that's his nickname. And again, I won't say his real Yanomami name, but I know
why he got the nickname Ricky Martin.
I think because he traveled to that military base, and sometimes doctors do go in that region.
He just came back home in the Vida Loca? Like,
yeah, exactly. So I think, I don't know what happened, but he adopted the name Ricky Martin. So yeah, that's my brother's name.
He could have been Tupac.
I know. Yeah. So, but nobody told me not to say my name out loud. So
maybe it's cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool. So Anyapoa, actually, I'm freely called Anyapoa now, in the territory, but, both sides of the border. So anyway, I met my brother, met my mom, met my uncle. Yeah, so many members of my family. So, so I think, I'm sure I was part of their stories growing up, and here I am. And again, it must have been weird because I'm here, I'm Yanomami. I don't really speak the language. Doesn't look like I can hunt very well. I'm afraid of spiders. I have to wear shoes. I'm starting to wonder, like, mom's a little disappointed in me. So
can you describe, so I get the sense that, like, I mean, you get there, they haven't seen you for 20 years. So like, set up your hammock right here. You're with us. Everything's cool. You meet your mom. You have this like wonderful reunion that I imagine must be incredibly fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
And then I get the sense that they just go, okay, what do we do now? Like you're in, like, let's live life.
That's it. And
can you describe those first days?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's pretty much how my trips were in the following years, like I show up, there's kind of like a big reunion, and then we just live life. So like what I love, is that, it's funny. 'Cause like growing up, I would, like all my friends' moms, right? I would be like watching them make them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and mac and cheese, like all these motherly things that they do. And I'm like, never had that growing up. And then when I was in the village, so the Yanomami people, they chew tobacco. So they grow tobacco.
Dude, they're packing fat lips all the time.
Yes.
Full like horseshoes, dude. It's like, it's for real, man.
And it's just a leaf. So they have gardens of tobacco. We harvest the leaves, we smoke it over the fire, cure it, right? And then when we're ready to make a wad of tobacco, we moisten it with water and we mix it with the ash of the hearth on the fire, right?
And that basic sort of.
Yeah. And then we roll it up into a wad and you just stick it right in your lip. And so like my very first memory of motherly affection is that every morning my mom gave me a nice fresh wad of tobacco. And I'm just like, Mom, and so that's the motherly love I missed growing up,
That is
fresh
so
wads
awesome.
of tobacco.
Some folks are like, here's your lunch. Other folks are like, here's your fatty, honey.
And I loved it because it was just, I don't know what to say. It was just so much affection in this wad of tobacco.
Yeah.
So that's what I loved. I wake up in the morning, mom would give me fresh wad of tobacco.
Did you chew or anything before that?
No.
What was it like doing? Like,
my head was spinning.
Yeah.
But I got, at first I didn't puke, but I just like, I wanted to hurl, and so strong. And they chew when they're like 8 or 9 years old. They have these little tiny wads, like trainer wads, I guess you could say. But it's just a leaf. That's it. It's just a plant and doesn't cause any health issues or anything, so, but it's got that nicotine, right? And the nicotine gives you that kick, but it also stems hunger. So the Yanomami don't really eat breakfast, right? They chew the tobacco and it gives them that kick. So then they'll go hunting, maybe they'll go out fishing, they'll go out gardening. And then, so depending on what we want to do that day, so maybe I'll go fishing or maybe I'll go to the gardens. But what was interesting is that like only the women go crabbing, But like, I wanted to see everything. So I went crabbing with the women. It was a little strange, but it was fine, you know? So I would go crabbing. Yeah, exactly. Other times, you know, my brother would climb a tall tree, smoke out a hive of honey. And so we harvested honey that day. You know, it was just, I loved Yanomami. It's just, there was never a boring moment. There was always something to see, something to do. And you're always with your people, whether you're fishing, and we're always laughing, having jokes and things like that. You know, I would pretend to be a shaman. I would start chanting and waving the axe around. I took the hallucinogen several times with my brother.
Well, I want to talk about that, but I want to talk about your brother first. Tell me about your brother, because he's who I understand you had a really special bond with kind of immediately.
Immediate bond. We were like attached to the hip, and I think maybe because I was his brother and I'm his blood, and you know, and I'm from the outside world, and maybe he got a little taste of that when he went to the military base, and maybe he sees me as someone who can teach him things, right? Mm-hmm. So I taught him how to use a camera, and he loved the camera. And I thought, wow, this guy could be like a great photographer or videographer someday. And so he went around the village and took pictures. And, you know, I taught him how to use, back then we used MP3 players. So I taught him, you know, he would listen to, like Taking Back Sunday on the MP3 player. And he's like, this is really good music, really good music.
It could be worse than Ricky Martin. Huh?
Yeah. And, he just wanted to know everything that I do. And I remember I gave him my watch, and it would be like 152. And he's like, what's this? And I would tell him in Spanish, 152. And then it would click to 153. He said, what's this? I said, it's 153. And it clicked to 154. I'm like, all right. So we did this for a whole hour, you know, and he was just absolutely just amazed, you know, just enthralled.
Because he was like, dude, I got one too many.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right. So
many o'clock is not very useful.
Right. Yeah. So after we go into the second hour, I'm like, nah, I'm done. I can't I can't do this. Yeah. So he taught me, really taught me how to use a machete to make the, you know, new gardens, taught me how to chop down trees. I'll never forget the one time, you know, like, you know, we're cutting down this tree, we're, you know, making these, but you can't just cut down the tree. Like he's like, you gotta howl like a Yanomami. So I would like just let out this weak howl. And he's like, no, you do not howl like a Naba. You howl like a Yanomami. So I just let out this huge howl, and he's like, that's it. Now cut down that tree. And I was like really going after this tree, cutting down this tree. I just felt, you know, really cool, you know, and then, you know, just, I don't know, so many memories, fishing, making, like he would teach me how to make tobacco wads, and they knew how to make them nice and packed really good. You know,
what is the methodology behind making an appropriate? It's
just, you mix it with the ash, and then you kind of have to whip the ash out of the tobacco, because you don't want too much in there, right, but you also want just enough to give it that kick. And then you just kind of roll it up.
What does the ash do?
I actually don't know, but it gives an extra a kick to the wad.
I know they chew, not they, but like I know where they chew cocoa leaves, they put like some sort of it's an alkaline substance into it, and like that helps the chemical. So a lot of times when you get like a bag of cocoa leaves, they'll also give you like a packet of baking soda, and you like kind of chew them together. I wonder if it's like something like that.
Yeah.
But anyhow.
Yeah. So all these different things, you know, he gave me a bow and arrow, and we would go just, you know, not far, but we would go out hunting for like little things around. So it was.
Did you have any successful hunts?
No, you know, you're not a real man till you kill your first peccary, and I haven't killed my first peccary. Yeah. So I'm hoping to, I'm just joking there. Like, you know, but like, that's like a big sign. Yeah, kind of. Yeah. It's like a big symbol of your first big kill, you know?
For sure.
But yeah, not just like, you know, birds and lizards and things like that around there. So nothing major. So yeah, I don't know. We just had fun. And then we would go trekking in the jungles from one village to another, like one garden to another. So we went inland, and that was an amazing track, you know, just going through the jungle, and you just have nothing but forest around you. And there's something special about, like, if anything happens to you, like, no one's going to know, you know, except the people around you. So
it's just game over.
Yeah.
When you went to these other villages, or these other gardens where presumably other, you know, kind of groups were, did you find that they knew you too? Or knew of you?
In the surrounding, yeah, definitely. Yeah, actually, all of them knew who I was and my family's history. Yeah, wow. All along the river for sure. Yeah, so I spent the next years, just every time I go back, just learning a little bit more, learning more of the language. And just,
I want to hear about doing hallucinogens with Ricky Martin.
With Ricky Martin, yeah. Well, it was
what
actually,
is it?
It's made from the Ebena tree. I forget the name of the genus species off the top of my head.
Oh,
but it's like a pod that has seeds in there. It's like sticky, and you pull open the pods, and they got to dry up in the sun, and then these seeds, after they dry up, you have to grind them up into a powder. So I have like a little pestle and mortar type thing.
Yeah.
And you just grind that into a powder and just keep grinding and grinding. And then within these seeds, it's a mix between DMT and bufaltenin. And so, DMT, sorry, and bufaltenin. So it's kind of like, the DMT gives you that big kick, and then the bufaltenin gives you that extended, hallucinations and all that.
Uh-huh.
And so, what they do is after it's been processed and it's a dried powder, they have this meter long pole. It's like I forget what the wood it's out of, but it's hollowed out.
It's like a reed, kind of.
Yeah, and it's hollow pole. Yeah. So, and then they pack about, I don't know, tablespoon, depending on how
they put a dose in.
They put a dose in. Let's put it that much. Yeah. And so, I was always watching the shamans take it, and they do their chanting, and I love their chants, and it's just like really cool. And I'm just like envisioning like what they're going through, what they're experiencing. And then, one day mom's like, all right, your turn. So my mom's like, you have to do this. So she pushed me.
So this is a weird bouquet of motherly affections.
Yeah.
Like not weird, but like a foreign, certainly.
Yeah. Mom loved me so much. She wanted to make sure that I take this hallucinogen before I leave. Yeah.
Right.
So, and my brother, was like, all right, let's do it. So we were out on the side, and she packs a dose, and then one end of this is tapered, and the open end, you just put it up your nostril, and it goes, you blast this powder up your nasal cavity, and it hurts a lot.
Bet.
Yeah. Cause that force of the blow, into your nasal cavity. So I'm like, scratching my head, doing that thing, like, oh, this hurts so much. And it's like, okay, let's do it again. But you got to do it in the other nostril. So he does it again. And then, I don't know, like 2-3 times, And
you're like, do you feel it starting to like come on as he's doing the other nostril, or are you like waiting for it still?
Yeah, I start feeling it a little bit. Yeah. And then obviously you got like snot just like coming profusely out here.
Uh-huh.
And then I remember it was really funny. This is the first time I did it. And I did it with my brother. It was so much fun, and we were laughing, and then it really hit me. And then, I don't know how to explain it, but it's almost like I can feel the pulsing veins through all the trees and the leaves.
When you say that, when you say it's starting to hit you, like, this is like I've done drugs before, a lot of drugs. Have you done any drugs before?
You mean
prior to this?
Yes, okay. I have. So I have an idea of what this may be like.
Okay, gotcha.
I've never done it with your nose hurting so much and like so much snot coming out.
There are a myriad of things that are not ideal sets and settings.
It tasted so gross, and everything. But I just rolled with it. But then like what's interesting, and this is just, I'm not saying this is what the other Yanomami feel, but this is what I felt, like all of a sudden you don't feel the pain of like the bugs biting you. Like the sun feels differently as it hits your skin. And then I just like, I don't know, kind of got lost in the trees. And then I looked around, and I guess, I don't know, my Western kind of psyche kind of creeped in, and I started like freaking out a little bit. Cause I was like, I've never seen so many boobs in my life. I'm like, everyone is naked. I'm like,
that is a very interesting.
So I'm like, everyone is naked. What's going on? So anyway, that's my first experience.
Well, how long does this
like an hour? Yeah, about an hour. Yep. And then my brother helped me back to my hammock, and then I remember Mom was just laughing at me, like I don't know what she said, but
is it like a psychedelic experience? How I think about one, like is it like how intense is it like compared to whatever else?
Well, it depends because Depends on how much you take. So
did they give you a baby dose?
A bunch of baby doses, but
Okay.
I realized that like they can take 2-3 times as much the amount that I was, given. And actually over the years I started taking more. But then watching the shamans take it, it's like, it's mind boggling how much,
how they can even fit that much dust.
Yeah.
In
and how they're able to, build that tolerance toward that pain. And I guess doing it. So yeah, I mean, we call it entheogens. So entheogens is just a term where you take a sort of mind altering substance for the purpose of, for spiritual reasons or whatever. And so I know that the Yanomami do it because they believe in animism. So everything about their reality is controlled by an animal spirit or some kind of spirit, right? So like the jaguar spirit, the harpy eagle spirit, anaconda spirit, and the weather, the success of their gardens depends on the spirits. And those spirits are, they are connected to shamans. So the shamans are the ones that, that take the hallucinogen and they enter the spirit world, and their chants, when they start chanting, is sort of like a language to be able to connect with the spirits. And they can use those spirits to help heal the sick. Maybe they'll use it to wage war against an enemy village, or they'll use it to make sure their, garden grows well, or to convene with, before they go hunting, maybe they'll convene with the animal spirit that they want to kill, things like that. So I became, when I started, engaging a little bit more and more, I came to really appreciate, why they do it. It's just hard for me to deal with that.
Yo, sure. Yeah. Were you just ever like, hey, can I just like eat this instead?
Can you put this in pill form? Yeah.
So you mentioned that you did it with your brother. Your brother's not around anymore.
Yeah.
How'd you find that out, and how'd you interact with that?
Yeah. So before I, this kind of leads to the plot line of the documentary WAYUMI. And one of my trips, so one of my favorite times in the jungle, in the village, is like when the sun is setting and you're just kind of like chilling in your hammock around the fire. The biting gnats, they kind of like go to sleep, and the mosquitoes aren't out in full force yet. So there's like, I don't know, this is like really nice time where it's like not hot and you're just hanging around the fire and you're just talking, you're eating plantains or whatever kill you had that day. And we're just talking, and I'm talking to mom, I'm learning more Yanomami and talking to her. And then she starts breaking out in broken English, like out of nowhere. And I had no idea she knew any English.
Like what? How do you mean? Like,
she goes, son, she goes, Florida, it's good. She goes, New Jersey, New Jersey's good. She goes, Pennsylvania, or she say Pesiteri, it's good. At this point, I'm sitting up in my hammock and she's speaking English to me, and she goes, I like peaches, I like pizza, I like French fries, I like apples. She started naming all the foods.
Was this just crazy disorienting? I
was just like, well, first of all, I'm like, Mom, it's been so many weeks of just pointing and misunderstanding.
Where the fuck was this?
Yeah, like, are you fluent in English? I was so, but at the same time, I was like really shocked. I'm like, wow, she remembers, English. And then she goes, you take me there. And I was just like, what? Like, you want to go back? And I thought she never wanted to go back.
She's telling you why she wants to go back. She's telling you like, I like a lot of these things too. Like, why don't you bring me back there for a minute? Okay.
But of course it's more than just pizza and French fries. I think maybe she's starting to realize that like, in order for her to see her daughter and her other kids and her ex-husband, maybe she needs to go there,
So she's kind of angling like a little bit. She's like, this is why I want to go there.
Yeah.
But like also, well, real quick, you told me that there's like a kind of, that sort of thing is sort of prevalent in their culture where they'll say something, but they'll kind of like mean something else, or they'll kind of like move things around just a little bit.
Yeah.
I didn't really, how does that, what's the deal there?
Well, I'm still learning the language myself, but I know that like, the Yanomami, when they speak, you kind of have to, it's a contextual language. you can't just like record it and then later translate it and then know what's going on, even though you're translating. Like you can translate the words, but without hearing their intonations and how they repeat themselves or the context of which they're speaking about, it would be really hard to know what, it can be hard to know exactly what's going on or what they're saying. Right. So yeah, no, that's true about the Yanomami language. And it can be challenging sometimes when you're trying to translate in your head, like what it is that they're saying versus what it is that they're meaning, especially when they say things, they like to repeat themselves a lot,
Right. So like it would be if Andrew was going to a baseball game, right? And he was like, oh yeah, I'm going to invite Mark and Mandy to come with me to the baseball game. And it would be like, instead of being like, can you invite me to the baseball game, Andrew? I go, well, I like baseball, right? Is that like kind of the idea?
Yeah,
there,
a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. They can speak metaphorically. They can speak. Yeah. And sometimes other times they're pretty direct. I don't know. It's like I said, it's a contextual language. And, and that's why, maybe it's tough that there's no like how to speak Yanomami book, it's just it's really hard. You can learn basic stuff, but it's really hard to learn without being there.
How would you like introduce yourself to me if,
yeah, they don't say like, hey, how are you? How are you? Such a weird abstract concept. Like, what do you mean how? I'm here, I'm alive, I'm standing.
Yeah, it's like, look, how do I look, man? Yeah.
What do you mean how am I? Yeah, there's no like thank you or anything like that. And I like how like things are just very blunt and direct, like when you're ready to leave, it's like, okay, like, hey guys, it's been really good. I got to get going. Yeah. Like, nah, they say, yako, I'm going. And then the response is kopaheri, which is, okay, you go. And that's it. Right. That's it. There's no like dramatic goodbyes or hugs or anything like that. And then you just go.
Even you.
Yeah.
Even you, when you're going back to America.
Oh no. Yeah. Well, that's so funny. I don't know. No, maybe I adopt some of that when I come here, and that causes maybe some.
Well, no, I'm saying like when you're leaving the Yanomami people to return to America, is that just like a?
Oh no, that's a little bit more dramatic. Yeah.
Oh,
that's
sure.
a little bit more dramatic. But like, yeah, if you're just gonna like, if you're like in the middle of talking and you just want to just go, you just leave. There's no
deuces.
Like, there's like politeness or anything like that. Like. It's like, oh, excuse me, may I please have some water, Mom? No, it's like, Mom, give me water,
Right.
It's just very, but when they're telling stories or they're recounting things or when they want to like, discuss something like very important, you kind of have to, you can't just like listen to a bit of it and understand what's going on. You kind of have to really be there and understand like the context of what they're talking about.
Right. So your mother now is telling you all these things that she likes about America. This is a plot line in this documentary, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. Yeah. And ultimately it relates back to your half brother.
Yes.
So, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So, and so that was in 2013 that she first asked. And so it was really hard because, just there's no birth certificates. There's like no age, there's no documentation. They don't count beyond 2. There's no, in my community, I know it's different now, but like just talking about my community now. So it took me like 6 years to finally get together enough resources and enough networking to finally pull this off. And that is the basis of WAYUMI, is to fulfill my mom's wish to take her from the community of Hasupue Irokaimin and bring her to the United States so that she could reunite with my siblings and my family for the first time in 30 years. For my brother, it'll be the first time he ever meets his mom, because he was only 8 months old when he lost her. And my sister has some memories, and of course, my dad. So, and that's the premise of the documentary. The hard part about it is that, like, you saw that footage of kind of this kind of contention I had with my brother about not letting my mom go. And I think it's because he's jealous. He wanted to go with me. And
you wanted him to come. You weren't like...
I just didn't. He doesn't have a birth certificate. He doesn't have a passport. He doesn't have an ID card.
You had enough resources to you go, look, I can get one person out of here. I can
get Mom out.
For like a little bit. She's the one who asked me. She wants to go. She's my mother. I care about you deeply, but I'm doing this, man. I gotta. And
Yeah, so it was during, and I was in the middle of doing research as well, and I know we'll get to that, but like during that process, I got a message that there was a hunting accident, and apparently it was a freak accident. My brother was out hunting, and a big burst of wind it happens. I've seen it, through the forest, and the wind knocked a huge branch and just landed on his chest and killed him. Yeah.
How long after the fact did you hear about this?
Probably, I don't know how long, it was probably several weeks before like I could really confirm that he died. But yeah, that was really hard. How
long had you known him at that point?
Well, I reunited in 2011. Yeah. And it was 2019. So like 8 years, over the span of 8 years, but he was always there when I came back. And, so he was my best friend down there. He was everything, we were attached to the hip, and I saw this young man, even though like I saw how intelligent he was, and he would have been, I think, incredible in working, in like making a film together or doing projects together. I had visions of like bringing him to the US to fulfill his, wish and desire. Long-term partnership. Yeah. And then it was gone just like that. And I was in a position where, man, I just lost my brother, but I feel like I got to put my grieving on hold because my mom just lost her only living son in the jungle. And how am I supposed to deal with this, And so the documentary does kind of show some of the struggles that I went through in trying to reunite my mom with her kids, knowing that her son just lost one. Yeah.
You had told me earlier that the Yanomami have a lot of obvious like customs. What do they do when somebody passes away?
Yeah, there's several things that can happen, and it depends on the nature, whether it's disease or something. But, one of them is that they'll dress up the body, with feathers and everything. And then they'll make a huge bonfire in the middle, and they'll burn the body. They'll cremate the body, and they'll also burn all of his possessions. There's to be any resemblance of any artifacts or anything that could be tied to him. They all must be destroyed.
There's no keepsakes or anything?
No keepsakes, and it all must be burned. And after the body is burned, there's bones, right, still left over. So in a very special and ritualistic way, the shamans or selected people will pick out the bones, gather the bones, and then they grind it into a powder. And then they make this like banana drink broth, and then they'll mix the bone powder with the plantain drink or banana drink, and then you drink the remains. Yeah.
The shaman does, or everybody does?
The close relatives, do, and the shamans, yeah. So everyone, yeah.
Is that what they did with your brother?
That's what they did with my brother, and I participated in the funeral ceremony. I drank my brother's ash, and that was a very traumatic and sad moment for me. And I felt like I had to put my grieving on hold to keep it together, my sanity together. But the moment I touched that pot of plantain drink that had my brother in it, that's when I lost it. I just broke down, and I was with my entire family. We're all wailing and crying, and it's very loud. It's like very loud cacophony of screams and wailing. And in a way, it sounds scary. It looks scary, but it also makes you feel okay that you're with other people that are sharing that pain with you. And then you just go ahead and you drink that banana drink and you share it. And so I don't know well enough what that means spiritually by taking a drink. But for me, I feel like, part of him continues to live on in me in some molecular way.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, it must feel, that's a crazy vulnerable moment within like this group of people that you would 20 years of not knowing, and then to come back into like a situation, even 8 years after having made contact with them. to experience something like that intense and like tragically intimate just has to be wild.
Yes. Yeah. And that's one thing I've learned is that everything is out in the open in the Yanomami. Like there's no private time. You grieve together, you laugh together. Everything is done like as a family. And so while we do, I feel like in our society, we're a little bit more, I'm not trying to be insulting, but we're just more individualistic in the way we operate as a people and as individuals, where that doesn't really exist. So like in Yanomami society, or at least traditionally. And so, yeah, to go from like having to deal with like death, but like death the Yanomami way, it was so much going on, but then, and then recovery and grieving the Yanomami way as well. It really made me feel more connected with my family and the community there.
What do you think about it compared to like a Western funeral? I
actually never been to one.
Oh, well,
my very first funeral.
You don't want to go for sure. Like, I mean, but.
Yeah. That's not usually in my weekend plans, but, I don't know, like the idea of, I mean, I'm not going to, every culture has their way, and I respect fully and completely how each one honors the dead for sure. So yeah, I don't see anything wrong with, the way that, we do funereal ceremonies here compared to the Yanomami. They're just different. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that they're mutually bad and mutually good. You know what I mean? It's like, or equally bad and equally good. Right?
Yeah.
One of the things that we've kind of been like teasing it a little bit here and there. What do you now do as a researcher and professionally?
Yeah. So what, the last hour and a half, that's the origin story.
I think it's got to be 2 hours.
2 hours. Close, yeah. To answer that question. Right.
Yeah.
So I'm a microbiome researcher, and out of University of Guelph, Ontario, and I'm finishing up my PhD to defend my thesis next semester, and then I will continue doing that research. And so, for those that are hearing the term for the first time, the microbiome is a collection of it's a micro ecosystem, a collection of microorganisms like bacteria, viruses, fungi.
Okay, but before we go there, in the same way that like maybe an accountant goes like, yeah, I do accountant things. I am an accountant. Tell me, like, if I was like in a sentence, tell me give me your title or like your occupation. Like, what would you say your occupation is?
Yeah, I'm a microbiome researcher, and I study the gut microbiome of the Yanomami people.
Okay. And why is that important?
Why is that important? Yeah. And so the microbiome is a collection of trillions of microorganisms that live everywhere in and on your body, your skin, underneath your fingernails, your hair, your ears, your mouth. But most of the microbes live in your gut. And that gut microbiome starts at birth. So the seeding of your microbiome starts at birth. And throughout your life, those microbes that live in your gut are training your immune system. They're protecting you from disease. They're metabolizing food. They become they're like an organ, an essential organ. And so if that microbiome were to be disturbed or imbalanced, it is linked to all kinds of diseases. And these are diseases that affect societies of westernized and industrialized societies like the US, Canada, Europe, and so on. And what is happening is that because of our lifestyles, which is characterized by eating ultra-processed foods, limited interaction with our ecosystem, overuse of broad-spectrum antibiotics, stress, pollution, etc., right, has caused over the years a reduction of diversity of the kinds of bacteria that live in our gut. And so over generations, we are losing these very important species that may be essential for keeping us healthy. And so it causes diseases like obesity, diabetes, chronic inflammatory disorders, autoimmune disorders. I mean, we all know somebody that has some kind of issue that's related, to autoimmune or chronic inflammation, whether you have a food allergy, diabetes, asthma, skin psoriasis, all these types of things. And so they're happening at epidemic proportions in our societies. And so we are now appreciating the fact that the bacteria that lives in our gut play a very important role in our health and well-being. And so where I come in, which I feel very lucky to be part of as a researcher, is that we are now, as a focal point of science and research, we are looking at societies that don't have that type of influences or things that affect their microbiome. And these are remote indigenous societies, various groups like the Hadza in Africa, the Matsis, and the Yanomami people. So the Yanomami are known to have one of the most diverse gut microbiomes in the world. And we argue that because of that very strong, resilient microbiome, they are protected against cancer, obesity, diabetes, all these diseases, because they just don't really exist down there. We don't see it at the levels that we see it here. So we argue that they must harbor some very special microbes and bacteria. And so that's where my research comes into play. And it all started in one of my return trips when I collaborated with a researcher just to collect stool samples. And I studied pre-med and I thought about going into medicine, but, that it just didn't fit into what I really wanted to do in terms of science and in terms of helping the Yanomami. So I was introduced to the field of microbiome and I thought, wow, this is amazing because your microbes is a reflection of what you eat. It's a reflection of your diet, your lifestyle. Well, the Yanomami have a very strong diet high in fiber. They eat clean food. They are spiritually connected to their food. They hunt, they gather to do it communally. And so their microbiome is telling a story. It's a cultural and biological legacy as a result of their, of their way of life and their lifestyle. And I thought, that's my mom. that's, this research is about me studying my mom, my family, my heritage, but at a molecular level, at a microbiological level. And I thought, this is so cool. So now I'm known as the crazy uncle that comes back and asks for their feces. And so I'm like, hey, Ma, how's it going? It's been a couple of years, but yeah, can I get a stool sample real quick?
Oh my gosh. How,
yeah.
Well, that is certainly an intimate bond between mother and son.
Yeah, very intimate, right? Yeah. And for those that are wondering, the best way to study the gut microbiome is to take stool sample because those microbes that live in the stool is like a proxy for the microbes that live in your gut. And so at University of Guelph, we use various research tools to study how diet affects the microbial ecosystems. We have this cool tool called the RoboGut, which is simulates the conditions of a distal colon. So I try to recreate the Yanomami microbiota.
What's a distal colon?
The colon is.
I know what a colon is. I don't know what a distal is.
Oh yeah, so the colon has there's regions, right? So proximal, medial, distal. The distal is right at the end. Yep. Yeah. So then that's where
pre-butthole.
Yeah, okay, exactly. Pre-sphincter. Right there. Anyway, and so the RoboGot simulates those conditions, and I'm able to remodel and simulate the microbiome of a Yanomami using this system. Mm-hmm. And what this allows me to do is to grow the bacteria, and which is really cool because, in order to get to know what the bacteria is doing, you got to grow it and you got to study it while it's living. And so our lab does that. And, I'm not the only one working on it. We have a whole lab that's working on this Yanomami microbiome project. And so my argument is that the Yanomami diet, rich, high in fiber, dietary fiber as a result of plantains and other foods, maintains their gut microbiota. And then if you were to disturb it, change that diet to a westernized diet, you're going to see a massive diversity drop off. But it's more than just seeing what microbes die off. It's what functions are being lost. And so you can see where like in our society, what we've done, to our bodies through industrialization, we've seen a die off of all these microbes. And so we need to know, what does our ancestral microbiome look like? Well, every one of us that lives here has
unique.
Yeah, is unique, but has been subjected to the negative effects of industrialization.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And that's why the Yanomami people, I think, are a focal point of this research, because we're looking at a people that have limited to no contact with the outside world. They don't take antibiotics. They don't eat ultra-processed foods. Everything they eat from the surrounding environment is clean, healthy. And so, there's a unique opportunity to study this before it's gone forever.
Did your mom ever get checkups and blood work and stuff when she was
here in the US? Yeah. I know she did. Yeah. Vaccinations and things like that. Yeah. So,
have you ever like looked at those to see if there was a change?
Her microbes?
Well, I mean, I guess there wouldn't be a microbiome thing, but have you ever been like, Mom, did you feel like shit after like going from here to the American diet for 6 years?
Yeah, well, I know she did. Yeah, when she came back to visit. Yeah, but there's a lot of things going on.
Well, I guess you're being introduced to all sorts of new like stuff that you've never had before, like whether it's a virus or like a
Yeah. So I hope that my research will help us discover novel therapeutic pathways or opportunities to treat these diseases that afflict, millions in our society and it's costing billions in the healthcare industry, right? So if you can imagine maybe finding, the probiotic derived from a Yanomami stool, if not a probiotic, maybe it's something that the Yanomami is producing. Because you got to keep in mind, these microbes evolved in a Yanomami gut, in a Yanomami environment with Yanomami food. It's not like you can just take that and plop it in someone in New York City and think they're going to be okay.
It's almost like yeast strains in beer, where like you can have these certain things that produce these certain outcomes in a fermented beverage, but you need to kind of know what you're doing.
Exactly.
And you need to know how to apply it.
But maybe in a controlled way, we can develop, these co-therapeutics where, because we now realize that certain medications, certain diseases, you have better recovery if you improve your microbiome. So anyway, I think what's interesting is that I'm excited about this because it's a unique time to be in this field. And I feel that there are advancements that are happening. And I feel like, studying the Yanomami people, could help us, try to combat some of these, terrible diseases. At the same time, it's like, I'm studying my own people, my own, the samples are my family. So it's really great. 3, we are creating a new, historically research among the Yanomami has been very exploitative, and extractive. And I recognize that. And so we're creating new models where we now use community-based participatory research approaches where the Yanomami, they're not just subjects of research, they're collaborators, right? Because they know the rainforest more than any other scientist could ever know, the cycles, the way it evolves, the way it changes, just the way it breathes, right?
Well, it's a naturalist sort of language. It's like, oh, well, yeah, this happens every year at about this time. And they just think like, oh, that's when like, I don't know, this bird does this thing. But to like an avian researcher, it's like, that's actually very profound. I'm very interested in what you're doing. It's like, is that like a kind of accurate?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they have this profound ecological knowledge that's based on thousands of years of living there, right? So you can imagine a lot of trial and error. I mean, they're scientists, and I look at them as my fellow colleagues and peers in this research. So they're not just people that like, oh, hey, you have a great, stool sample. Let me just, I just want to take it and I'll do the studies, but you know what, I'll just leave you alone. I just want to study.
Homie.
Yeah, I'm going to publish. And in academia, like
you're et al.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, exactly. It's like, this is great. You have your informed signed consent form. I'm going to go take this. I'm going to get my degree. I'm going to go publish some papers. I'm going to get tenure. I'm going to get tons of money through grants and whatever. It's going to help me. What do the Yanomami honestly really get?
Well, let's talk about that in just a minute, because you're teeing me up, and I can tell that you're teeing me up, and I want to talk about that hard. That's a cliffhanger. You want to stick around for that. I want to talk about the documentary. I want to talk about a lot of stuff. There is like a matter of business. You and I have discussed like previously about it. And that's your perspective on, you know, as a researcher, as somebody who studies these people and spends time with these people, as somebody who's been offered a wife by these people. You said no. Your dad said yes. There is a point of controversy there for sure. And then also the other thing is like, these people don't have like birth certificates. They don't have. Do you have any sense of how old your mother was when she was offered to your dad?
Betrothed?
Betrothed. Well, yeah. 6 of one, half dozen, right?
Well, you know, they don't count beyond 2 and there's no birth certificate, right? So, and I wasn't there, so I really have no idea how old she was. Right. But I can tell you that in Yanomami customs norms, usually you're betrothed when you're really young, but not until you entered womanhood do you become married.
Right.
And they engage what's called bride payments. So the like the husband to be or whatever would have to spend several years with the family, hunting for them, protecting them, doing all these different things.
Being like, yo, I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And your dad participated in that?
I don't know. I mean, it may be in different ways because he brought, you know, like machetes, pots and pans, things that like, you know.
He was a man that was bringing resources into
Yeah. And that's within the cultural norm of how Yanomami engage. You know, you don't just visit a village without bringing something to trade. Trade is something super important.
It's necessary. It's like a proxy for politeness.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Yeah.
It's like if you went to a party and you showed up empty handed, it's like, hey man.
Exactly. Yeah. So the controversy, you know, it's from a different era. I'm sort of, you know, I don't see it as a controversy because of, you know, I mean, how could I find a controversy on the product of that?
It turned out pretty good.
Turned out all right. Yeah. And so, you know, the idea that an anthropologist married a Yanomami person, like maybe that was a big deal back then. I don't know, but like we're in a different era, different generation. Like it's really not that big of a deal. And, you know, when you go to the Yanomami, and because I was curious about this, about like, what did the Yanomami think about
this white dude coming down and marrying?
Yeah, but let's not strip agency from my mom. She had agency. She had a say in this. You know what I mean? It's not like he just like grabbed her, right? So
yeah, I mean, I hear you, and this is not me like offering a counterpoint. This is just me like trying to relate my perspective. When you say betrothed, like it wasn't like you and maybe her. It was like her, you kind of deal, right? I mean, like it was. I guess what I'm saying is it was presented as, if you want a wife, this is her.
Well, for me, you mean for me?
Well, no, I mean, maybe, but like, I was also talking about like I guess what I'm wrestling with is a Western standard versus like a indigenous custom.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to figure out for me how I like navigate it. Right.
Yeah, no, it's, I understand. And it's tough, you know. It was actually tough for me to grapple until I got to know the people, know the culture, know the way of life, know, cause I think it's inevitable that how we try to navigate and understand this, we're going to be ethnocentric. Maybe it's just no way around it. Right. Cause how could you understand something that's so radically different without trying to project, something of your own culture and trying to judge and compare based on what you see as standard and as right, and, it used to bother me for a while, but I've become patient with that. And I understand because I see it as a teaching opportunity, to know that like your way of life and your culture, it's just a speck in this huge, sandbox of different cultures.
There are all sorts of ways that people do things.
Yeah.
Such as the funeral.
Yeah. Everything, funeral, marriages, everything. And so I think my family's marriage is still seen as something extremely unique to this day.
For sure.
My dad marrying a Yanomami person as an anthropologist. But, I can see now, like when you get to know people well, as my father would say, the differences or the similarities far outweigh the differences. And, my mom, if she wasn't, let's say my dad rejected my mom, it's not like she just would have been married to someone else like the next day. You know what I mean?
Could your mom have rejected your dad?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My dad made sure that she wanted to marry him. In fact, she was getting a little
really?
Frustrated. Like, are you going to marry me or not?
I went through not the same, but a similar thing with Catherine.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, that whole thing and that era of the 60s and 70s and 80s, that I look at that as those are some historical things that I think we can learn from. And I'm not going to judge it because, we've come a long way since the 60s. So, in the 70s. And so, I refuse to project any of my Western, prejudices or notions of what I see as right and wrong. There are a lot of things that in Yanomami culture I don't like.
Yeah, kids smack each other. Sticks.
I'm not going to tell my son, next time someone bothers you, you grab a baseball bat and you smack him in the head real hard, make sure he bleeds good. So, I don't, I'm not going to tell my son you should start hallucinating. You're old enough now. You got to start hallucinating every day.
You to acid. Yeah.
So, and I'm not going to tell my daughter oh, you're going to marry this person 10 years from now. Right. But it's not unique to their culture. Our cultures, cultures all around the world, that engage in, different kinds of, betrothals or bride payments. And yeah, maybe I don't like it, but I'm not going to, judge it. So, and then with me, I was completely surprised that I was offered a wife, among the Yanomami, and I didn't understand what that meant. But now that I've got to understand what that means to be within their kinship network, it's not like I even had a choice. It's part of very important social fabric of having a wife. But I, told them okay, I can be your husband, but I'm not, we're not
going to do anything about it.
I'm not going to do this whole bride payment thing or anything I'll
it's sure, buddy.
Yeah. So, a lot of funny stories from that. I had to kick her out of my hammock a couple of times.
Hold on. You got to give us one funny story about it.
Well, in 2011, right, when I first met my family.
It was right from the jump.
It was right from the jump. and my mom, I met my brother, met my uncle, and and then this girl came up to me and gave me this hug.
I'm your wife.
And I'm oh, who's this? And they said, oh, that's your wife. I'm oh, okay. I was don't know what that means. And I don't even know wife is the right term to use, but I was okay. And then I'm meeting other people. I'm who's this guy? Oh, that's her husband. And I'm all right, I don't know what's going on here, and I'm just totally blanking out on, what's happening, but so many nuances and everything. And I think what it is that I think my mom being the only woman to have connection to the outside world, having children that have access to these resources.
They wanted children immediately.
Well, I think nothing can solidify my position and my commitment to the community than having kids right away.
Yeah.
And I was wanting to tell them hey, I'm committed to you guys all the way. I want to help you. I want to do this. But at the same time, and it's kind of funny that we're talking about this, I feel for my mom because she's I want grandkids,
sure.
And I want to have Yanomami, grandkids, and, you don't even have to be here. Just give me grandkids. Yeah. So anyway, complete side story there, but actually, no, it goes back to your question, right? Yeah. When you realize the intricacies and the complexities of love and marriage and friendship and the culture, the social construct of how marriages, happen. And I like to think that their system is a system that works because they survived. They're still surviving today in 2025, so something is working, right? And I think it really helped me appreciate a little bit more about the complexities of my family's marriage and how, culture, how diverse, the humanity is. It's really, really crazy. Yeah.
The human experience is novel for everybody. And those points of uniqueness get highlighted tenfold when it's like, okay, I don't have any reference here. It's like everything is kind of different. And I think that's like, I think being thrust into such a novel situation really gives perspective on humanity as a whole and how like completely unalike we are at some points, but how ultimately like we all are, as a species. I want to talk about, that kind of likeness, the point of your research, but also the point of your documentary. Your mother likes peaches. She likes New Jersey, Pennsylvania. She likes pizza and French fries.
Yeah.
And ultimately the goal was, you said, okay, Mom, if you like that shit, I'll get you it.
Exactly.
Tell me about like the documentary in long form. We've touched on it here and there, but I want to hear like the long form pitch.
Yeah. So basically the documentary follows my journey to fulfill my mom's wish in 2019 to go down and find her and bring her out, and the whole bureaucratic struggle of getting her passport and visa and then going to the United States, which
Did they give her a birthday?
We made up a new birth certificate. Yeah, we made up a new birthday.
What's her birthday?
It's like June. I actually don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know her birthday. Yeah, we just totally made it up. And it's funny because when she doesn't know how to write. So
there's no written language.
I mean, there is, and I'll talk more about this later, about, how the Yanomami people of today, but my mom does not. Yeah. No, traditionally there's no written language. Okay. Everything was passed down orally, which is crazy. Right. So when my dad had no way of learning the language except, learning by immersion and orally, but they
couldn't make him flashcards.
Yeah, no, they could not make him flashcards. So all of her documents say, does not know how to sign. And then there's one signature where she just made 2 squiggly circles as her signature. So, it was very interesting. And the visa, interview was very interesting too. And you're like, what is going on here? I told the officer, I'm like, I'm not lying. Here are all the links, National Geographic, like we're well known. He's like, all right, come back tomorrow. I'm going to go look this up. We had the following day, the officer was like, wow, like this is some crazy story you got here. And that's why we were like, because we want to tell the officer, like, we just want to let you know, my mother does not want to stay in the United States. She just wants to see my family and just get the hell out. And that's what an officer wants to hear. Like, you don't overstay your visa, you just go and then you get out. Yeah. And that's what so we were like, we really want to stress that she does not even want to be here. She just wants to see her kids and then we're going to leave. And so he was really nice. He thought it was really interesting, kind of weird, but he gave us the visa. And anyway, I forget where we were going with this.
Documentary.
Oh, the documentary. Yeah. So it follows that journey. And it was a very touching reunion between my family and my dad. So they did see, and the documentary shows little glimpses of that. We had to obviously, we wanted to document this really unique, special historical moment, but also I wanted to respect the privacy of my family and what they're going through. Yeah. Not everybody wants to have a camera in front of their face, but we were able to, in a very respectful way, I think, record this really, and I'm glad we did, because now it lives for all time, this unique moment. And my mom was so happy to see my sister. She was very, very happy. And I bet it's that mother-daughter, kind of connection. Sure. Yeah. So she was really happy, and she's really happy to see my brother too. And we were all dispersed. So I had to get an Airbnb in Philly, an Airbnb in Easton and whatnot. But we made an Airbnb in Stroudsburg. Yeah. and she met my kiddos, and she was really enjoyed the part of seeing the family. The only problem was it was like dead of winter in February in Pennsylvania. Cold. She got sick. It was cold.
Oh no.
Yeah. And it's not like I get to choose when, just to get her. It's like, this was the time and we had to do it.
Yeah.
And so it was a great reunion. The good family was together one more time, after 30 years of being, just being apart. And I think, even just those brief moments, it was great. It was great. I'd have no idea what they talked about, but for the first time in my life, I could look at the dining room table and see mom and dad just talking to each other. And it was, so that was pretty cool.
I love that. Well, I've seen some of the documentary, watching it before, or we were checking a little bit of it out before we did the podcast. It's so beautifully shot. It's cinema verite, which I love. It's, for listeners, there aren't any talking heads, there aren't any interviews really. It's archival footage, but also, firsthand following along is Dave goes and does this stuff, which is how I think a documentary should be in a lot of ways.
Yeah. What I wanted to kind of accomplish too is that, the Yanomami people today are dealing with very, complex contemporary issues for the first time in their, history. And when you Google Yanomami, you see things like, the rainforest being destroyed, gold miners killing them, poisoning the water with mercury, diseases, cultural degradation, things like that. So these are all very real problems that the Yanomami are facing. But if anybody wants to know anything about the Yanomami and that's all they see as victim status. No, I'm sorry. When you look up online, just victims, victim, and they are, but I feel like it does them a disservice by dismissing them as a strong and resilient and, people, and I just want, this documentary, this podcast, just to tell them it's just one Yanomami story, but it's from the perspective of someone who is a brother, who is a son, and just bring you and just hey, come hang out with me in my shabano. I want to tell you, this is how they contact the spirits. This is how they die. This is how they, engage in funerals. This is how they go hunting. And I feel like if we can humanize them more and recognize them, not as these strange other people, but just they're just fellow community members. Maybe, just maybe, we might care a little bit more about saving the Amazon,
I mean, and for sure. And that's I've told a bunch of people that's the goal of this podcast. It's we're not going to be the podcast that goes you should really care about this because this, and this. We're the podcast that goes, here's some stories. If that resonated with you, here's some stuff that you can look into and maybe keep those stories being made because that thing doesn't go away.
Yeah.
Because that environment doesn't get destroyed or that, whatever. I mean,
yeah.
And, it's interesting too, painting things as victims, for a lot of news sources and tabloid-esque news sources, the story of your father and mother was here's an anthropologist that should have known better. And here's this woman who was taken from the Amazon. It's not entirely how you pointed out. She had a lot more agency in that than,
you're dismissing her voice and her. Yeah.
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 Speaking of first, when is this documentary available? Can you?
Yeah, for sure. So we got picked up by Grasshopper Film.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So we're really happy. I think it's a good home for us.
Great.
And we're premiering at this November 15th at the Doc NYC Film Festival.
Hell yeah.
So
dude.
We're super stoked to finally share WAYUMI with the world starting in New York. And, obviously we're really stoked and hope that, we can find some international distributors, get it down in Latin America and Europe. So this is just the beginning. So I think we're going to work towards, sharing this story throughout the world.
I'm so excited for you. We're going to bump it here. I'll put it up on my social and stuff when it debuts and all that. There's another thing that kind of goes hand in hand with this. earlier you and I had talked about, you had mentioned gold miners and it's one of many existential threats that like exist for the Yanomami. Describe what are the gold miners? What's the deal with it?
So the Yanomami territory, there's a lot of gold, let's just say, in that territory. And especially with the rising price of gold, it led to a gold rush. And it led to, these invasion of these illegal gold miners in Brazil. They're called garimpos or garimpeiros. And, but it's in Venezuela too, Venezuela and Brazil, where they are penetrating into their territory, setting up these mining camps and basically scorch earth style, extracting this gold. And they use mercury, right, to extract the gold. And then that mercury is just, dumped in the water. And then obviously, the consequences, it's, mercury poisoning and the food systems, but then outright violence, where the gold miners have killed, many Yanomami in their villages, brought diseases, alcohol, prostitution, things like that. So that's a big existential threat and easy to wrap your head around as something that's bad. So,
objectively not good.
Yeah. So like gold mining in territory, Yanomami territory, bad. And so that's some of the issues that they're dealing with. And another, kind of challenge that, I'm trying to kind of, approach is, the Yanomami have been highly sensationalized and exoticized. And since the first sustained contact was made in the late 50s, early 60s. And
what do you mean by that?
Like,
not the sustained contact, but it's exoticized.
Like they are just kind of like these primitive, like naked people that are just living in the forest, like animals in a zoo, just kind of like in their own thing. And a lot of things have changed since then. And for reasons that are good and bad. And I won't get into those, but let's just say a lot has changed. And there are communities now that know how to read and write. Or not, leaders in Yanomami that know how to read and write. They can speak Spanish and Portuguese. They're now becoming teachers themselves. They're getting involved with like local politics. They're integrating more and more with the national politics. And now that brings a whole kind of change that I think brings, self-determination. It brings representation, respects their voice. But at the same time, as they become integrated, it brings some ugliness too, right? The politicalization, the political framing of the Yanomami people, the introduction of ultra-processed foods. And I'll give you one example. We had this great story about tobacco, right? Where there are communities that I work with in Brazil that have completely forgotten or just don't know, they just don't grow tobacco. They use their government subsidy monies to go to the city and they buy the processed tobacco. And on the package, it quite literally says, you will have cancer, or this will cause heart attack. And unfortunately, they, as I explained to you earlier, they chew when they're like 8 or 9 years old. So I'm really afraid that we're going to have another generation, that has been chewing these cancerous causing products since they're 8 or 9 years old for their entire life. And I have a feeling we're going to see, rates of different kinds of cancers.
Then you don't feel like that happens with the less processed tobacco. Yeah.
It's just a pure leaf. Yeah. There's been no reports of just the leaf causing any health issues. Yeah.
Is that true?
Yeah. I haven't heard of any, dental, I've spoken to a few dentists and they say, it's not the leaf that causes tooth issues. It's the sugar. It's the white flour. It's all these different ultra processed foods. And, as a microbiome scientist, I know what happens to your oral, ecosystem. But the Yanomami, their lived experiences, if this is going to cause me harm, is going to cause me harm now, right? Like if this is hot and I touch it and it burns me, I know it's bad. But if they drink, like a glass of Kool-Aid or Tang or soda, They're like, oh, I'm alive. I'm okay.
I feel good.
I feel good. And this is great.
It's delicious.
It's delicious. Yeah. What do you mean this is going to cause diabetes?
So now they're like, I'm doubling down on this. There's nothing wrong. I don't notice any sort of like immediate effect.
And so what they're doing is, they're becoming more dependent on these imported ultra processed foods. The youth are forgetting some of the ways of hunting and gathering and fishing, and not all the youth, but the process is starting, right? And they're losing that connection to the rainforest, that ancestral traditional knowledge.
It's much easier to eat this Butterfingers bar than it is to go.
And then, I believe, I fear, and this is corroborated by others, is that everything that they know about the rainforest, and they know so much, it's all because they passed it down orally. And I think that's just fantastic. That's crazy, right? Yeah. This huge library of knowledge from thousands of years is maintained, and they just pass it down orally. Well, if the youth aren't listening to their elders, they're forgetting so much knowledge and wisdom. And so that's another type of, there's gold mining, killing them, bad, but then there's sort of this like ground up, existential. Ground up, sort of more insidious, kind of, damage and destruction that's happening from within. And so I feel, I don't know, I feel like as I think like a Westerner, I'm educated like a Westerner, and I know, I can see it from the outside in their future, what's going to happen. Right. And I, want to play a role, not in telling them like, hey, this is bad, but like just informing them, and just, they have a right to self-determination. They have the right to make their own decisions. Yeah. But, in order to do that fully and authentically, they need education, they need intercultural, training and knowledge. So I'm a scientist, and my goal is to train the Yanomami, certain Yanomami leaders, how to engage in science and research, how to ethically, participate in research so that you have control, let's say, over your own data or control over the samples, not to be prohibitive, but so that they are not exploited, And
so you started
the Yanomami Foundation. Nice. And it was just a dream, an idea. It's an NGO. And it's started with my fellow colleagues and team, field teammates. And so we basically, put together the resources to support research expeditions and Yanomami programs and education. So, we're growing, we're at grassroots, but I have a feeling, that, with the right team and the right people, I feel like we can really increase our impact with the Yanomami.
And what are some like kind of projects? I know you were telling me about solar panels the other day. Yeah.
So, we're talking about ethics and research, right? So, this idea of reciprocity where, the Yanomami, they don't provide consent and saying that like, yes, we understand all the legal implications of what happens to our, stool samples, like they don't know that. They provide consents because they trust you. It's relational trust, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like the 23andMe thing that my grandma did, where all of a sudden now I can't commit any crimes.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Right? And they own it and sold it to a company, right?
Yeah, so it's terrible.
So I acknowledge and recognize, and I challenge all academics, that when you take samples from indigenous people, you are in a way, you are benefiting, from their knowledge that they have spent thousands of years of getting. You get grants, you enhance your resumes, your CVs, you get recognition, you get, you publish a Nature paper and you get all this recognition, upward mobility. But there's no mechanism in place that says you need to take part of that and you need to give it back to the Yanomami. And what I've recognized that the Yanomami are smart, they're ambitious and eager people. They're like, I want to be a scientist. I want to learn. I want to go to Canada. I want to see your lab. I want to see what you do. I want our youth to see so they know how to do. And so I think it's our responsibility as researchers to help them, to increase their capacity, as collaborators. And so the foundation is striving towards that, where we are raising funds through government grants or research grants, whether they're government or private or whatever. And we ensure that certain part of that funding supports community outreach projects. And those projects depend on what the Yanomami tell us. So for example, one community was really suffering from malaria. And they said, this area has such high rates of malaria. And we discussed a project that was practical, and that was a mosquito net project. Mm-hmm. So we custom designed a mosquito net that was infused with repellent that could protect a whole family of 4 or 5. And the Yanomami loved it, because it was culturally relevant. We
let them stay all together. Yeah,
it was culturally relevant. They, they had input. They told us what it is that they need. It's not us telling them what it is they need. So there's like a medical school. I'm sorry. There's like little medical dispensaries and Yanomami schools throughout the territory. And they need a little bit support in the infrastructure. So we provided solar panels and lithium-ion batteries to be able to power, ham radios or SATCOMs, so that and these SATCOMs are important because if there's ever like a massive outbreak, COVID-19 or tuberculosis, they can report out immediately. Or if there's, infiltrators of gold miners, they can report out immediately. So communication is really essential. And then another project is I just got a grant through Wikitongues, a fellowship through them. And this Wikitongues project will help me start a project where I'm going to create a microbiome research guide book in both, Spanish and in their native language to teach them what is the microbiome, why is it important. Because I just got done telling you that, it's important for your health and well-being. And if we don't take care of it, we get sick. Well, the Yanomami, it's important for them to know that as well. Yeah. But we have to put that in culturally relevant, materials. We can't just write up we can't write up an academic report and say, okay, here you go, go read and be knowledgeable. So yeah, sorry, I'm really getting into this.
No, I love it.
But the idea is, listening to the Yanomami, what they need, and then, they help us make the decisions,
Are like private citizens just able to donate to the Yanomami Foundation?
Absolutely. Yeah. We have a website, yanomamifoundation.org, where you can learn more about the projects, but you can also make donations. So every little bit helps.
We're going to have a direct link to the donation in the description here.
Awesome. Thank you.
And we're going to put it at the very top of the description, like before anything else. The first thing is going to be that link. You said you don't really have constant contact with your mother. But man, I am very sure that wherever she is, she's stoked about the stuff that you're doing. I can't thank you enough for jumping on and telling your story and telling. The biggest joy of doing this show is when you get the feeling that you're helping document something that's actually important. And that's something that we're lucky enough to feel like kind of a bunch here. And, dude, thanks for being part of it, man.
No, this is great. And really, really appreciate being here. And I really hope to connect, with your audience and your listeners. And,
you will.
Yeah.
You will.
If I can say there's elements of this story that I think is universal to everybody all across the world, and I just hope the unique parts of this, can resonate with all these different people throughout the world that are dealing with issues of identity crisis, family loss, and things like that, and to create sort of kind of like a community that lets you know that you're not alone. And I really appreciate you having me here and this opportunity to share it.
It's been killer, man. Yanomami Foundation. The link is in the description. Go there, throw in a couple bucks, make a difference. And dude, thanks again for coming on.
Thank you.
you that know me, you know I'm about to head down to the Amazon rainforest in a few days.
One opportunity, maybe one last opportunity for the family to be all together.
Yeah.
Hey Mom, I'm here. He doesn't want to send his mom right now. There's no way he can send his mom right now. Does she want to go? Mama.
I need like a reset to handle this.
But if you tell her, she's gone.
And I just want to do the right thing.